Did you know the earliest hidden boss in Elden Ring's lore, the Dragon Lord Placidusax, ruled as Elden Lord long before the Erd Tree even existed? Long before Queen Marika ascended to godhood, before the Golden Order imposed its law across the lands between, before the Shattering tore the world apart, there was an age of stone and storm where ancient dragons reigned supreme over a civilization we can barely comprehend. Placidusax, a god in his own right, waited at the heart of time itself for the return of a deity who abandoned him, his very existence a testament to an epoch so distant that the current age has nearly forgotten it ever happened. But he is only one piece of a vast, interconnected puzzle that spans thousands of years and countless hidden corners of the lands between. The secret bosses of Elden Ring are not mere optional challenges tucked away for completionists to discover. They are the keepers of the world's deepest truths, the living remnants of ages that the Golden Order sought to erase, the witnesses to cataclysms that reshaped reality itself. Each one guards a fragment of history that Queen Marika and her progeny would prefer remain buried. Each one tells a story that the Erd Tree's golden light was meant to overshadow. From the primordial dragons, who ruled before the concept of the Elden Ring itself, to the fire giants, whose god was murdered to fuel an age of gold, to the shamans of the spirit realm, whose ancient faith predates all outer gods, to the cursed experiments that sought to transcend mortality, to the failed demigods whose ambitions collapsed into madness, to the artificial dragonkin created in humanity's hubris and left to rot in forgotten ruins. These hidden encounters form a shadow history running parallel to everything you witness in the main narrative. They are the deleted chapters of a story the victors rewrote, the uncomfortable truths that contradict the Golden Order's carefully constructed mythology. When you descend into Siofra River and face the ancestor spirit in its ethereal domain, you are not simply fighting a challenging optional boss. You are confronting the remnants of a spiritual tradition that once allowed communion between the living and the dead, a practice that the Golden Order's control over death and rebirth rendered obsolete and dangerous. When you discover Astal, natural born of the void, lurking in the deepest caverns beneath the lands between, you are meeting the instrument of a cosmic catastrophe that destroyed entire civilizations, a malevolent star that fell from the heavens and annihilated the eternal cities in a single cataclysmic strike. When you finally locate Mog, Lord of Blood, in his hidden palace beneath the earth, you are uncovering a conspiracy that reaches into the very heart of the demigod family, a twisted attempt to birth a new age through forbidden blood rituals and the kidnapping of the most powerful Empyrean. These are not side stories. They are the main story if only you know where to look. The hidden bosses reveal that the history of the lands between is not a simple tale of golden glory followed by tragic decline, but rather a cycle of conquest and erasure repeated across multiple ages, each new order built quite literally on the graves of the last. The dragons were overthrown by the age of the Erd Tree. The giants were genocided to steal their flame. The merchants were falsely accused and buried alive. The Nox were punished for their ambitions. The misbegotten were enslaved. The omens were shackled and hidden away. The Albinorics were created and then persecuted. The Dung Eater sought to curse all future generations. Miquella abandoned his own flesh in pursuit of an impossible dream. Millennia rotted from within while waiting for a brother who would never return. Rani murdered her own body to escape the control of the outer gods. Godwyn died in soul but not in body, becoming a cancerous infection spreading through the roots of the very Erd Tree itself. Every hidden corner of this world contains evidence of these crimes, these failures, these desperate attempts to break free from cycles of domination that stretch back to the very beginning of recorded time. The game presents you with a main path, a clear route from Limgrave to Leyndell, to the mountaintops, to the forge, to the capital of Ash, to the Erd Tree itself, but that path only shows you what the Golden Order wants you to see. It is the hidden bosses, the secret areas, the optional encounters that most players will never find on their first playthrough that contain the actual truth of what happened here. They are hidden not because they are unimportant, but because they are too important, too revealing, too damning to the official narrative. From Software has always excelled at environmental storytelling, at letting patient players piece together narratives from item descriptions and architectural details and enemy placements. But Elden Ring takes this approach to an unprecedented scale. The hidden bosses are not randomly placed, their locations tell stories. Placidusax exists outside of time itself, in a crumbling arena that can only be reached by lying down in a specific spot and literally removing yourself from the normal flow of reality because his age has been so thoroughly erased that it no longer exists within the conventional timeline. The fire giant is chained atop the mountain where his people were slaughtered, forced to guard the very flame that Marika stole from his god. The ancestor spirits roam the underground rivers where the shamans once performed their rituals, forever separated from the surface world that has moved on without them. Mog hides in a blood soaked palace that can only be accessed through a portal hidden behind an illusory wall in a frozen wasteland, because his ambitions are so transgressive that they must be kept as far from the Golden Order's sight as possible. Millennia, though technically a main story boss for some players, can be entirely avoided, and her location at the roots of the Halik tree, Michaela's failed attempt to grow a new Erd tree free from outer god influence, speaks to the tragedy of the most powerful demigods being unable to save even themselves. Astel destroyed the Eternal Cities for daring to create a Lord of Night who could challenge the Golden Order, and now it lurks in the ruins of its own victory, a mindless force of destruction waiting in the dark. The Dragonkin soldiers, failed attempts by the Eternal Cities to transform humans into dragons, are scattered throughout the underground rivers and lakes, shambling reminders of humanity's hubris and the terrible price of trying to transcend one's nature. Lich Dragon Fortisax guards the dream of Godwyn, fighting an eternal battle against the death blight consuming his friend long before the golden glow of the Ear Tree ever touched the lands between, long before Queen Marika ascended to godhood and reshaped the world with her divine order. Another power held absolute dominion over these lands. In the pre-Erd Tree era, during what we now call the Dragon Dominion, the ancient dragons ruled supreme, their colossal forms casting shadows across mountains and valleys that knew nothing of the Golden Order to come. This was an age of scales and storms, of lightning that carved the sky and tempests that bent the very earth to draconic will. The ancient dragons were not mere beasts. They were beings of terrible intelligence and overwhelming might, creatures whose mastery of the elements allowed them to reshape reality itself. At the apex of this draconic hierarchy stood Dragon Lord Placidusax, a being of such immense power that he claimed the title of Elden Lord itself. Yes, you heard that correctly. Placidusax was an Elden Lord, the first we know of, though his reign predated the Erd Tree and the version of the Elden Ring we encounter in our journey through the lands between. The Elden Ring, as it turns out, is not a static concept tied solely to Marika and her Golden Order. It is a manifestation of the fundamental order of the world, and different ages have seen different interpretations of what that order means. Placidusax served as consort and lord to a god, an outer god whose identity remains shrouded in mystery, but whose power was undeniably tied to the primordial forces of storm and lightning. This was the order that preceded all others, an order written not in golden light, but in crackling electricity and howling winds. From his throne in Farum Azula, Placidusax commanded not just the dragons, but the very structure of reality in the lands between. Farum Azula itself is one of the most enigmatic locations in all of Elden Ring lore, a floating citadel that exists in a state of temporal flux, caught between moments, suspended in a perpetual storm that defies the normal progression of time. When you finally reach Farum Azula in your journey, you are not simply traveling to a distant location. You are stepping outside the conventional flow of history, entering a place where past and present blur together, where the ruins of dragon civilization persist in a kind of eternal now. The architecture of Farum Azula speaks to the sophistication of dragon culture. These were not primitive creatures hoarding gold in caves. The ancient dragons built soaring temples and vast plazas, structures that incorporated both functional design and aesthetic grandeur, all imbued with the elemental power they commanded so effortlessly. The construction of Farum Azula as a floating citadel was itself a demonstration of dragon supremacy. The ancient dragons did not merely build upon the earth. Like lesser races, they tore stone from the mountains and suspended it in the sky, creating a fortress that literally looked down upon all other beings. The citadel was imbued with storm magic of such potency that it created its own weather systems, its own localized reality. The perpetual tempest that surrounds and permeates Farum Azula is not simply atmospheric. It is a manifestation of the dragon's power, a physical expression of their dominion over the natural world. Lightning does not simply strike in Farum Azula. It dances through the architecture. It courses along the ancient stone. It becomes part of the very fabric of the place. This was the seat of dragon power, a location so suffused with their elemental authority that it could not be fully conquered or destroyed even after their civilization fell. The ancient dragons worshipped what we might call a storm-based order, a cosmology centered on the raw, untamed power of lightning and tempests. This was fundamentally different from the Golden Order that would later dominate the lands between, where the Golden Order emphasizes structure, hierarchy, and the eternal unchanging nature of Marika's rule. The Storm Order of the Dragons celebrated power in its most primal form. Lightning is instantaneous, overwhelming, impossible to resist when it strikes. Storms reshape landscapes, tear down what exists, and create anew. This was the philosophy, if we can call it that, which governed dragon civilization. Strength was the ultimate virtue. Power was its own justification. The dragons did not rule because of divine mandate in the way Marika would later claim. They ruled because nothing could challenge them, because their mastery of lightning and storm made them functionally invincible. Placidusax's reign was marked by the absolute dominance of dragons over all lesser beings. Humans, to the extent they existed in any organized form during this era, were beneath the notice of dragon civilization. They were insects, scurrying things that lived and died in the shadows of beings who measured their lifespans in epochs. The beasts of the land, the various creatures that would later evolve into the monstrous fauna we encounter throughout our journey, were similarly subordinate. Some served the dragons, others were simply irrelevant. The hierarchy was clear and unchallenged. Dragons stood at the pinnacle of existence, and everything else occupied various lower rungs on the ladder of being. This was not cruelty in the way we might understand it. It was simply the natural order as the dragons perceived it, the strong ruling the weak as a fundamental law of reality. But even in this age of draconic supremacy, there were stirrings of change, whispers of a new power that would eventually challenge and overthrow the storm order. The greater will, the outer god that would later empower Marika and establish the Golden Order, was already beginning to extend its influence into the lands between. The exact nature of the greater will remains one of the most debated topics in Elden Ring lore. But what we know is that it represents a fundamentally different approach to cosmic order. Where the storm order of the dragons was chaotic and power-based, the greater will sought to impose structure, to create a system of eternal laws that would govern all existence. The incipient influence of the greater will and the nascent Erd tree represented an existential threat to dragon civilization, not through direct military confrontation at first, but through the slow introduction of a competing cosmology, a different way of organizing reality itself. The opposition between the storm based order and the emerging influence of the greater will was not immediately violent. In fact, it may have taken centuries or even millennia for the conflict to fully manifest. But the fundamental incompatibility was there from the beginning. Two outer gods, two visions of cosmic order, could not coexist indefinitely in the same space. One would have to give way to the other. The dragons, secure in their power and confident in their supremacy, may not have initially recognized the threat. After all, what could challenge beings who commanded lightning itself, who had ruled unchallenged for ages beyond counting? The beastmen of Farum Azula represent another fascinating aspect of dragon civilization. These creatures, which you encounter as enemies throughout Farum Azula, were not slaves in the conventional sense. They were allies, servants who had been elevated by their association with the dragons. The ancient dragons forged alliances with the beastmen, recognizing in these creatures a capacity for loyalty and martial prowess that made them ideal guardians and warriors. The beastmen served the dragons with absolute devotion, protecting the temples and treasures of Farum Azula, enforcing dragon will throughout the lands between. In return, the dragons granted the beastmen a share in their power, teaching them to wield weapons imbued with storm magic, allowing them to channel lightning in pale imitation of their draconic masters. The relationship between dragons and beastmen was symbiotic in a way that dragon relationships with other species were not. The beastmen were not merely subjects, they were the warrior caste of dragon civilization, the enforcers of draconic law. And then, at the height of Placidusax's power, catastrophe struck. The god that Placidusax served, the mysterious storm deity to whom he was consort and Elden Lord, simply vanished. The reasons remain unknown. Did this god flee? Was it defeated by another outer god, perhaps the greater will itself? Did it abandon the lands between for reasons beyond mortal or even draconic comprehension? We have no definitive answers, only the aftermath. Placidusax, bereft of his god, faced a choice. He could have attempted to maintain his rule through his own power, to continue as Elden Lord without the divine authority that had legitimized his position. Instead, he chose to wait. He withdrew to the heart of Farum Azula, to a place beyond time itself, and entered a state of dormancy, an eternal vigil awaiting the return of his absent god. Yet the dragon's mastery of the storm was not merely a display of raw power. It formed the very foundation of their civilization, a culture built upon principles as ancient as lightning itself. The ancient dragons had developed a sophisticated society centered around the worship of storms, viewing the tempest not as a force to be feared, but as the purest expression of natural order. To them, lightning was more than elemental fury. It was divine language, a means of communication between the material world and something far greater. When Placidusax's heads turned skyward during the great storms, his priests, the most learned of the dragons, would interpret the patterns of lightning strikes across the clouds, reading prophecies in the branching paths of electricity as it split the heavens. This storm worship permeated every aspect of dragon culture, from their methods of governance to their understanding of time itself. The architecture of Farum Azula stands as testament to this reverence, each structure shaped by the very elements the dragons held sacred. The citadel's towers were not built in defiance of the wind, but in harmony with it, their curves and angles designed to channel the gales that perpetually swept through the floating ruins. Stone columns bore the scars of countless lightning strikes, their surfaces transformed into glassy, crystalline pathways where electricity had repeatedly found purchase. The dragons did not construct walls to shelter from the storm. They built amphitheaters and open plazas where the wind could howl freely, where rain could fall unobstructed, and where lightning could dance between specially placed conductors forged from metals unknown to later civilizations. The great bridges connecting Farum Azula's scattered islands were engineering marvels that swayed and flexed with the wind rather than resisting it, their flexibility ensuring survival where rigid construction would have shattered. Every archway, every platform, every colonnade reflected an understanding of aerodynamics and atmospheric pressure that would not be matched for ages to come. Within these storm sculpted halls walked creatures who had been elevated far beyond their original station. The beastmen of Farum Azula, those leonine warriors whose roars still echo through the timeless ruins, were not always the formidable guardians players encounter. In the earliest days of dragon dominion, they were simple beasts, creatures of instinct who dwelled in the lowlands beneath the floating citadel. The dragons, in their wisdom, or perhaps their need for servants capable of tasks their massive forms could not accomplish, granted these beasts something precious. Through rituals conducted during the most violent storms, when lightning struck the sacred altars of Farum Azula with such frequency that the very air became charged with transformative energy, the beastmen were given intelligence. Their minds expanded, their bodies grew stronger, and their lifespans extended far beyond what nature had originally intended. They learned to speak and to reason, to craft weapons and armor. The dragons taught them the art of war, and the beastmen proved to be exceptional students. They became more than servants. They became allies, warriors who would defend Farum Azula with a loyalty that would endure even after their benefactors had faded into legend. But the dragon's dominion, for all its majesty and power, would not remain unchallenged. From beyond the material world came a force that would reshape the lands between entirely. The fingers, those grotesque appendages of cosmic will, began to manifest in the physical realm, and with them came the influence of the greater will, an outer god whose vision for reality differed fundamentally from the storm-based order the dragons had established. The greater will sought to impose structure, hierarchy, and purpose upon a world the dragons had allowed to remain wild and free. Where the dragons saw beauty in the chaos of the storm, the greater will saw only disorder to be corrected. Where Placidusax ruled through strength and the natural respect his power commanded, the greater will offered a different paradigm, one of divine mandate and predetermined destiny. The two fingers began appearing in various locations throughout the lands between, seeking out those who might be receptive to their message, promising power and purpose to any who would accept the greater will's design. This ideological invasion manifested in physical conflict as early adherents of what would become the Golden Order began to oppose the dragon's storm-based faith. These first believers, empowered by incantations granted through the fingers, saw the dragons not as majestic rulers, but as obstacles to enlightenment, creatures of base elemental fury, standing in the way of true cosmic order. Skirmishes erupted across the lands between, as these Golden Order zealots sought to establish their own places of worship, often deliberately choosing sites the dragons considered sacred. Lightning clashed with holy light in battles that scarred the landscape, creating rifts and valleys that would persist for millennia. The dragons, accustomed to being the supreme power in their domain, found themselves facing enemies who fought not for territory or treasure, but for the supremacy of their god's vision. These were not battles that could be won through simple displays of overwhelming force. They were conflicts of faith, and faith, the dragons would learn, could be more resilient than stone and more dangerous than any storm. As these conflicts intensified, Farum Azula itself transformed from a seat of power into something else entirely. The floating citadel became a sanctuary, a refuge where the dragons could retreat from the encroaching influence of the Erd tree, that golden tree which had begun to take root in the heart of the lands between. The Erd tree's growth was not merely botanical, it was metaphysical, its roots spreading not just through soil, but through the very fabric of reality, rewriting the fundamental rules by which the world operated. Where the Erd tree's influence spread, the old ways weakened. The storms grew less frequent, less powerful. Lightning that once struck with divine precision became erratic, unreliable. The dragons watched as their sacred sites in the lowlands were abandoned or converted into churches dedicated to the Golden Order, their storm altars dismantled and replaced with symbols of the Erd tree. Farum Azula, floating high above the world and wrapped in its perpetual tempest, remained beyond the Erd tree's immediate reach, an island of the old order in a world rapidly embracing the new. Yet even within this sanctuary, Placidusax could feel his power waning. The Elden Lord's strength had always been tied to the natural order he represented, and as that order was supplanted by the greater will's design, his vitality diminished. The god he had served, the entity whose departure had left him waiting in eternal vigil, did not return to counter this new threat. Perhaps that god was dead, destroyed by the greater will's arrival. Perhaps it had simply abandoned the lands between, deeming the struggle not worth the cost. Whatever the truth, and Placidusax found himself defending a fading paradigm, his four heads still scanning the horizon for a deity who would never answer his call. Other ancient dragons felt this decline as well. Some chose to sleep, entering states of hibernation that might preserve their essence until the world turned once more in their favor. Others descended from Farum Azula to make their own accommodations with the changing world, seeking whatever place they might claim in the new order. But the decline was undeniable, a slow erosion of everything the dragons had built. In response to this existential threat, something remarkable occurred within Farum Azula itself. The timeless storm that had always surrounded the citadel intensified, growing more violent and more isolated from the normal flow of time. Whether this was a deliberate act by Placidusax, a final desperate measure to preserve what remained of dragon civilization, or whether it was a natural consequence of the clash between the old order and the new, the result was the same. Farum Azula became temporally displaced, existing in a state outside the normal progression of ages. Within the storm, time moved differently, or perhaps did not move at all. The citadel was preserved, frozen in the moment of the dragon's greatest glory, even as the world below moved forward through the age of the Erd tree and beyond. This isolation came at a cost. The dragons within Farum Azula were cut off from the world they had once ruled, unable to influence events or prevent the complete triumph of the Golden Order. They became ghosts of a previous age, powerful still, but increasingly irrelevant to the unfolding history of the lands between. Through all these changes, one constant remained. The beastmen, those warriors the dragons had elevated from mere beasts to thinking, feeling beings, maintained their loyalty to Placidusax and his fading order. Even as the world forgot the dragons, even as the Golden Order rewrote history to minimize their importance, the beastmen stood guard over Farum Azula's ruins. They patrolled the storm-racked bridges, defended the sacred temples, and fought against any external threat that managed to penetrate the temporal barrier surrounding their home. Their loyalty was absolute, undiminished by the passage of ages or the apparent futility of their vigil. When trespassers arrived seeking the power still contained within Farum Azula's depths, the beastmen met them with weapons forged in the ancient style and techniques taught by dragon masters, long since turned to stone. They were the last true believers in the storm-based order, warriors who had given everything to defend a civilization that the rest of the world had moved beyond. Faced with the collapse of his divine order and the fading of his god, Placidusax makes a choice that will define the final chapter of dragon supremacy. Rather than fight a losing battle against the encroaching New Age, the Elden Lord retreats into the deepest sanctum of Farum Azula, positioning himself at the very heart of the timeless storm that swirls eternally around the floating citadel. Here, in a state between sleep and waking, between life and death, Placidusax begins his vigil. His massive form coils upon itself, his remaining heads resting in patient anticipation, waiting for the return of the god who once granted him lordship over all dragonkind. The storm around him becomes a cocoon of sorts, a temporal anomaly where the passage of time itself grows uncertain and malleable. Within this eye of perpetual tempest, Placidusax can wait not merely for years or centuries, but for ages beyond counting, his consciousness dimmed but never extinguished, his hope never fully abandoned. This retreat into isolation serves a purpose beyond mere survival. By withdrawing to the heart of Farum Azula and surrounding himself with the timeless storm, Placidusax effectively seals a portion of the age of the dragons away from the world's continuing evolution. The citadel becomes a kind of temporal capsule, a fragment of the ancient past preserved in amber, made of wind and lightning. While the world below transforms, while new powers rise and the Erdtree eventually takes root to establish its own dominion, Farum Azula remains fundamentally unchanged. The architecture still reflects the aesthetic sensibilities of dragon civilization at its zenith. The great columns and platforms, designed to accommodate beings who moved through the air as easily as across the ground, retain their original grandeur. The temples and ritual spaces, constructed to honor the nameless god of storms, continue to echo with the memory of devotion. In this way, Farum Azula becomes a living museum, though one without visitors, a monument to an age that the rest of the world will gradually forget. The isolation is not complete, however, and the legacy of the ancient dragons does not vanish entirely from the lands between. Their descendants, those dragons who survived the transition between ages, continue to exist in the world below. These dragons, though perhaps diminished from the primordial power of their ancestors, still wield the fundamental force that defined dragon supremacy, the power of red lightning. This ancient lightning, distinct from the golden power that will later characterize the Erdtree's age, represents a connection to the storm itself, to the raw elemental fury that the dragon's god once commanded. Dragons like Lanceax and Fortisax, who will play roles in later ages, carry this legacy forward. They demonstrate that while the Age of the Dragons, as a period of unchallenged dominion, has ended, the dragons themselves remain formidable beings, capable of shaping events and inspiring both reverence and terror. The ancient dragon cult, which will emerge in later eras, draws its practices and beliefs directly from observation of these descendants and from fragmentary knowledge of the dragon's original supremacy. Placidusax's vigil, meanwhile, takes on a symbolic dimension that transcends his personal fate. The image of the once mighty Elden Lord, reduced to waiting in eternal patience for a god who may never return, becomes an embodiment of the dragon's enduring hope. It is a hope that refuses to acknowledge defeat, that insists the storm-based order, which once governed all things, might yet return to supremacy. This hope is not rational in any conventional sense. Placidusax has no guarantee that his god still exists, no promise that the return he awaits will ever come. Yet he waits nonetheless, his faith unshaken by the passage of time or the rise of rival powers. In this way, his vigil represents something fundamental about the dragon nature, a stubborn refusal to yield, an insistence on permanence in the face of change. The dragons, after all, were beings of stone and scale, creatures built to endure. Their civilization was constructed on principles of eternal dominance, not adaptation or evolution. Placidusax's waiting is thus entirely consistent with the worldview that defined the Age of the Dragons, a worldview that could not conceive of its own obsolescence. The physical presence of Farum Azula itself continues to inspire profound reactions in the rare individuals who glimpse it, or in later ages, manage to reach it. The Citadel's architecture operates on a scale that dwarfs human comprehension. The platforms are vast enough to serve as battlegrounds for creatures the size of ancient dragons. The columns rise like mountains, their surfaces carved with reliefs depicting the glory of dragon civilization, scenes of Placidusax in his prime, images of the storm god's worship, representations of the beastmen in their role as faithful servants. The spaces between structures are not mere gaps, but chasms that drop away into endless sky, reminders that this was a civilization that lived among the clouds, that treated the air itself as solid ground. The grandeur of this architecture is inseparable from its capacity to evoke fear. These are not spaces designed for comfort or human scale. They are monuments to power, declarations of supremacy rendered in stone and gold. To walk through Farum Azula, even in its ruined and abandoned state, is to feel the weight of the dragon's former dominion, to understand viscerally that humanity, should it ever arise, would be a latecomer to a world already shaped by forces far greater than itself. The beastmen who inhabit Farum Azula play a crucial role in maintaining the Citadel's integrity through the long ages of isolation. These beings, created or elevated by the dragons to serve as warriors and guardians, do not abandon their posts when Placidusax retreats into his vigil. Their loyalty, whether born of devotion, magical compulsion, or simple lack of alternatives, proves absolute. They continue to patrol the platforms and bridges of the floating citadel, maintaining a defensive posture against threats that for long ages never materialize. The beastman's dedication ensures that Farum Azula does not simply crumble into ruin through neglect. They perform whatever maintenance is necessary, though the citadel's construction, built to dragon standards of permanence, requires little. More importantly, they preserve the sanctity of Placidusax's resting place, ensuring that the Elden Lord's vigil remains undisturbed. The beastmen themselves become living relics, their culture and society frozen in the patterns established during the Age of the Dragons. They continue to wield weapons designed for dragon-era warfare, continue to practice combat techniques developed to defend against threats that no longer exist, continue to honor hierarchies and rituals whose original purposes have faded into instinct and tradition. The timeless storm that surrounds and permeates Farum Azula takes on additional significance beyond its role as Placidusax's refuge. For those rare individuals in later ages who possess the knowledge and means to reach the citadel, the storm becomes a destination in itself, a place of pilgrimage for those seeking to understand the fundamental nature of dragon power. The storm is not merely weather in any conventional sense. It is a manifestation of the power that the dragon's god once wielded, a fragment of divine force made semi-permanent through Placidusax's presence and will. To study the storm is to glimpse the principles that governed the Age of the Dragons, to understand how power functioned before the Erd Tree's golden light redefined the rules of existence. The lightning that crackles through the storm is not the gold-tinged lightning that will later be associated with the Erd Tree's influence, but the pure red lightning of the ancient dragons, the original elemental force. Those who brave the storm's fury and survive, who manage to attune themselves to its rhythms, can potentially harness fragments of this ancient power, learning incantations and techniques that echo the dragon's supremacy. The memory of Placidusax's rule, meanwhile, persists in the collective consciousness of dragonkind and, eventually, in the fragmentary records and legends of other civilizations. His reign is remembered as the pinnacle of dragon supremacy, a time when the natural order of the world placed dragons at its apex, unchallenged and unchallengeable. This memory serves different purposes for different groups. For the remaining dragons and their descendants, it is a source of pride and identity, a reminder of what their kind once was, and perhaps could be again. For the beastmen of Farum Azula, it is the foundation of their entire existence, the justification for their continued vigilance. For later civilizations, particularly those who arise after the Erd Tree establishes its dominion, the memory of Placidusax becomes something more ambiguous, a reminder that the current order is not eternal, that the Golden Order itself is merely the latest in a succession of powers that have claimed supremacy over the lands between. The knowledge that an Elden Lord existed before the Erd Tree, that a god other than the Greater Will once held sway, introduces a troubling element of contingency into what the Golden Order will later present as eternal and inevitable truth. Farum Azula itself stands as the ultimate testament to the Age of the Dragons, a physical embodiment of everything that era represented. Unlike other civilizations, whose ruins crumble and fade, whose achievements are gradually reclaimed by nature or built over by successor cultures, Farum Azula remains essentially intact, preserved by its isolation and the timeless storm. It is a relic in the truest sense, an artifact from a bygone era that has survived unchanged into a world that has moved on without it. The Citadel's continued existence serves as proof that the Age of the Dragons was not myth or legend, but historical fact. The scale of its construction, the sophistication of its design, the power required to keep it aloft, all testify to capabilities that later ages will struggle to comprehend, let alone replicate. In this way, Farum Azula becomes more than just a ruin or a monument. It is a challenge to the present, a reminder that the current age's assumptions about power and permanence may be no more secure than those of the dragons who came before. With the Age of Dragons fading into memory and the Erd Tree's golden light spreading across the lands between, Queen Marika the Eternal stood at the height of her early reign. This was the early Erd Tree era, a time of consolidation and conquest, when Marika sought to eliminate any power that might challenge her newly established Golden Order. The dragons had been subdued through diplomacy and divine authority, but another threat loomed on the frozen peaks to the north. There, in the mountaintops of the giants, an ancient race tended a flame that predated the Erd Tree itself, a fire that burned with the power to reduce gold to ash. The fire giants were not merely another tribe to be conquered. They were the keepers of the flame of ruin, a primordial fire that their fell god had bestowed upon them in ages past. This flame represented everything antithetical to Marika's vision. Where the Golden Order promised eternal stasis and unchanging perfection, the flame of ruin embodied destruction, transformation, and the end of all things. The giants used this flame to fuel their great forge, a sacred site where they had practiced their craft for millennia, shaping weapons and tools with fire hot enough to melt stone. To Marika, this was not simply a military threat, but an ideological one. The very existence of the Flame of Ruin suggested that the Golden Order was not absolute, that another cosmic force held dominion over a fundamental aspect of reality that her Elden Ring could not control. Marika's perception of the giants as a threat was not entirely paranoid. The Flame of Ruin possessed unique properties that made it exceptionally dangerous to the Erd Tree. Unlike ordinary fire, which the Golden Order could suppress or contain through incantations and blessings, the Flame of Ruin burned with a divine hatred, specifically attuned to burning away the very concept of the Erd Tree and all it represented. Ancient texts recovered from giant ruins speak of prophecies foretelling that this flame would one day consume the Erd Tree, reducing Marika's golden age to cinders and ashes. Whether these prophecies were genuine visions or simply the cultural mythology of a proud people, Marika could not afford to ignore them. Her entire reign rested on the premise that the Golden Order was eternal and unchallengeable, the existence of a force capable of ending that eternity, was intolerable. The fire giants, for their part, had no interest in conquest or expansion. They had dwelt in their mountain stronghold since time immemorial, content to tend their forge and worship their fell god in isolation. The fell god itself was a deity of fire and wrath, depicted in giant iconography as a massive face with a single eye, forever burning with divine fury. This god had granted the giants their flame and their purpose, and in return they maintained the sacred fire and used it to craft works of terrible beauty. The giants stood between 12 and 15 feet tall on average, with some of their champions reaching even greater heights. Their bodies were adapted to the brutal cold of the mountain tops, with thick skin that could withstand both freezing winds and the intense heat of their forges. They wore minimal armor, relying on their natural resilience and the protection of their flame magic. When word reached the mountain tops that Marika's forces were mobilizing for war, the giants did not flee or seek peace. They fortified their settlements, reinforced the approaches to their forge, and prepared to defend their sacred flame with every ounce of strength they possessed. The geography of the mountain tops favored defenders, with narrow passes, sheer cliffs, and constant blizzards that could disorient and freeze invaders. The giants blocked mountain paths with massive boulders, created avalanche traps, and positioned their fire monks at strategic choke points. These fire monks were giants who had dedicated themselves entirely to mastering the flame incantations of their people, capable of hurling great spheres of fire, creating walls of flame, and even calling down pillars of burning wrath from the sky itself. Marika's invasion force was unlike anything the lands between had seen before. At its head marched Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, a warrior of such legendary prowess that his name alone struck fear into enemies. Godfrey had been born as Huaralu, a simple warrior chieftain of barbaric origins, but Marika had elevated him to lordship and bound him to her cause through marriage and divine blessing. Despite his refined title, Godfrey retained the heart of Huaralu, the savage warrior who had once fought with his bare hands and reveled in the chaos of battle. For this campaign, Marika needed not the refined lord, but the primal warrior, and Godfrey embraced that aspect of himself fully, earning renewed fame as Huaralu, warrior, a title that emphasized his raw, martial ferocity over courtly sophistication. Alongside Godfrey marched thousands of soldiers, blessed by the Erdtree, knights clad in golden armor, and sorcerers who wielded the glintstone magic of the Carian royal family, who had recently entered into alliance with Marika's forces. But the most significant component of Marika's army was the trolls, massive humanoid creatures who stood nearly as tall as the giants themselves. The trolls had once been allies, perhaps even distant relatives of the fire giants. They shared similar stature and strength, and ancient carvings suggest they once fought side by side in wars against other primordial forces. However, the trolls lacked the giants' connection to the flame of ruin, and over the centuries, the two peoples had drifted apart, their alliance becoming more ceremonial than substantial. Marika, ever the shrewd politician, recognized this fracture and exploited it ruthlessly. She sent emissaries to the trolls, offering them a place within the Golden Order if they would turn against their former allies. The promise was simple but compelling: fight for Marika and be spared the giant's fate, be granted lands and titles within the new order, and have your descendants elevated rather than exterminated. The alternative, left unspoken but clearly implied, was to share the giant's destruction. The trolls, pragmatic and lacking the religious fervor that bound the giants to their fell god, accepted Marika's terms. This betrayal would echo through history, marking the trolls as both survivors and traitors, a people who chose existence over loyalty. The betrayal became evident when Marika's forces launched their assault on the giants' outer settlements. The trolls, who the giants had expected to remain neutral at worst, instead marched at the front of the Golden Order's army. They knew the mountain passes intimately, understood the giants' defensive strategies, and could counter the physical might that made giants such formidable opponents. When the first wave of Marika's army reached the outer defenses, troll warriors used massive hammers and clubs to smash through barricades that the giants had believed impregnable. The psychological impact was devastating. The giants found themselves facing creatures who looked almost like kin, who fought with similar weapons and tactics, but who now served the golden tyrant from the south. The fire monks responded with terrible fury, unleashing incantations that turned entire sections of mountainside into infernos. These were not ordinary flames. The flame of ruin burned with colors that seemed wrong, oranges and reds so intense they appeared almost black at their core, and the heat they generated could melt steel in seconds. Marika's soldiers learned quickly that golden armor, blessed though it might be, offered no special protection against this primordial fire. Entire companies were immolated in the opening engagements, their blessed weapons and sacred talismans reduced to slag and ash. The fire monks fought from fortified positions, hurling great spheres of flame that exploded on impact, creating secondary fires that could not be extinguished by conventional means. But Marika's forces had numbers, strategy, and the relentless determination of a leader who would accept no outcome but total victory. Godfrey led assault after assault, personally engaging the giants' champions in single combat. His weapon, a massive axe that seemed almost too large even for his considerable frame, cleaved through giant warriors with brutal efficiency. Where the fire monk's flames blocked a pass, carrion sorcerers countered with ice magic and gravitational spells, creating temporary paths through the inferno. Where giants held defensive positions, troll warriors engaged them in contests of pure strength, occupying them while Marika's knights struck from flanks and rear. The war ground on through weeks that became months, each mountain pass purchased with blood and ash. The giants' forge, their most sacred site, became the focal point of the conflict. This was not merely a place of craft, but a temple, a location where the flame of ruin burned at its purest and most intense. The forge had been built into the mountain itself, a massive cavern where the giants had shaped their greatest works. Defending it were the mightiest of the fire monks and the largest of the giant warriors, veterans who had tended the flame for centuries and would die before allowing it to be desecrated. With the last giant bound to the forge and the war concluded, Marika turned her attention to the remnants of the fire-worshipping culture she had just obliterated. The fire monks, those devoted keepers of the flame of ruin who had tended the sacred fire for generations, beyond counting, found themselves facing an impossible choice. Their god was defeated, their people exterminated, their purpose rendered meaningless by Marika's overwhelming victory. Some fled into the wilderness, carrying with them what knowledge they could preserve, seeking refuge in the hidden corners of the mountaintops where Marika's soldiers could not easily follow. Others, broken by the totality of their defeat, chose a different path entirely. They bent the knee to the new order, allowing themselves to be absorbed into Marika's religious hierarchy in exchange for their lives. These converts brought with them their deep understanding of flame incantations, the prayers and rituals that had channeled the fell god's power for centuries. The Golden Order, ever pragmatic in its consolidation of power, did not simply discard this knowledge. Instead, Marika's scholars and theologians set about co-opting these fire-based incantations, recontextualizing them within the framework of Golden Order doctrine. The ancient prayers to the fell god were stripped of their original meaning, their words altered, their purpose redefined. What had once been acts of devotion to a rival deity became tools of the Erd tree's servants, the flames themselves reinterpreted as merely another aspect of the greater will's dominion over the natural world. This theological appropriation served a dual purpose. It eliminated a potential source of resistance by removing the fire monk's unique claim to power, while simultaneously enriching the Golden Order's own arsenal of miracles and incantations. You can still find these corrupted flame prayers scattered throughout the lands between, their origins obscured by centuries of Golden Order revisionism, taught to clerics who have no understanding of the genocide that made their acquisition possible. The trolls, those towering warriors who had fought alongside the fire giants with such ferocity, suffered a fate perhaps even more cruel than simple death. Having surrendered to Marika's forces and pledged their service to the Golden Order, they discovered that loyalty to the Erd Tree came at a devastating price. The trolls underwent a transformation, a mutation that diminished them both physically and spiritually. Most visibly, the fiery red hair that had crowned their heads, a mark of their connection to the fell god and a symbol of their proud heritage, was systematically extinguished. This was no natural change, but a deliberate act of subjugation, a physical alteration that marked them as conquered peoples, their very bodies bearing witness to their defeat. The process by which this transformation occurred remains unclear, whether it was achieved through some ritual of the Golden Order, through breeding programs designed to eliminate the fire-touched traits, or through a curse laid upon the entire troll population. What is certain is that the trolls you encounter in service to the Golden Order, pulling carts along the roads or standing guard at strategic locations, bear no trace of the flames that once defined their kind. They are diminished creatures, their posture hunched, their eyes vacant, their purpose reduced to menial labor and brute enforcement. Some scholars suggest that the extinguishing of their hair represented a severing of their connection to the fell god, a spiritual castration that left them hollow and compliant. The few trolls who retained their red hair, found primarily in isolated regions far from the Erd Tree's direct influence, are noticeably more aggressive and independent, suggesting that the fiery crown was indeed tied to their will and vitality. The mutation of the trolls served as a living reminder to all peoples of the lands between that resistance to Marika's rule would result not merely in death, but in the complete erasure of identity, the transformation of proud warriors into servile beasts of burden. To commemorate her victory and to establish a permanent monument to the war's conclusion, Marika ordered the construction of the giant conquering hero's grave, one of the many catacombs that would dot the landscape of the lands between. This was no ordinary burial site, but a grand necropolis carved deep into the earth, designed to house the remains of warriors from both sides of the conflict. The fallen champions of the Golden Order, who had given their lives in the conquest, were interred with honor, their bodies preserved according to the Erdtree's customs, their weapons and armor placed beside them as testament to their valor. More surprisingly, the bodies of fire giants and their allies were also buried here, though whether this represented genuine respect for fallen enemies or simply a practical solution to the disposal of countless massive corpses remains a matter of debate among historians. The hero's grave itself became a deadly labyrinth, filled with traps and guardian constructs designed to prevent grave robbers and to test any who would seek to claim the treasures buried within. The architecture of the tomb incorporated elements that spoke to the scale of the war, with passages large enough to accommodate the massive frames of dead giants, chambers that could serve as resting places for warriors of both human and titanic proportions. The very existence of such a structure served Marika's propaganda purposes, transforming the genocide of an entire people into a noble conflict between worthy adversaries, a war that could be commemorated rather than a massacre that should be mourned. The giant conquering hero's grave became a pilgrimage site for Golden Order faithful, a place where they could contemplate the might of their goddess and the righteousness of her conquest, never questioning the moral implications of what had truly occurred on those frozen peaks. Yet for all of Marika's efforts to erase the fire giants and their god, the flame of ruin itself could not be fully extinguished. Though diminished from its former glory, reduced from a roaring inferno that threatened to consume the Erd Tree to a controlled burn, the flame continued to exist within the forge of the giants. This was the great failure of Marika's conquest, the one element she could not fully eliminate, The cursed last giant, bound to the forge and forced to tend the very flame his people had once worshipped freely, became the unwilling guardian of this lingering threat. His existence was a torment, his immortality a curse that prevented him from joining his slaughtered kin in whatever afterlife awaited them. The flame of ruin burned on under his watch, a constant reminder that Marika's victory, though total in practical terms, remained incomplete in cosmic ones. The flame represented a fundamental force of the world, a primordial power that predated the Erd Tree and the Greater Will, and such forces could be suppressed but never truly destroyed. This created a permanent vulnerability in Marika's order, a weakness that she was acutely aware of and that would shape her policies for the remainder of her reign. The flame's continued existence meant that the prophecy of the Erd Tree's burning remained theoretically possible, that the fell god's final curse could still be fulfilled if anyone gained access to the forge and convinced or compelled the last giant to unleash its full power. This victory over the fire giants, coming as it did after Marika's earlier conquests of lesser kingdoms and peoples, solidified her dominance over the lands between in a way that could not be disputed. With the giants defeated, only the ancient dragons remained as potential rivals to the Golden Order's supremacy. Every other significant power had been crushed, absorbed, or cowed into submission. The Storm Lord of Stormvale had fallen, the various human kingdoms had bent the knee, the giant civilization had been exterminated, and the fire-worshipping cults had been scattered or converted. Marika's empire now stretched across the entirety of the known world, from the coastal regions to the mountain peaks, from the underground depths to the highest plateaus. The Erd Tree's influence permeated every aspect of life in the lands between, its golden light a constant reminder of Marika's divine authority. Yet the dragons, those ancient beings who had ruled the skies and commanded the power of lightning long before the Erd Tree's arrival, remained unconquered. They represented the last major obstacle to total dominion, and Marika knew that her consolidation of power would remain incomplete until they too were brought into the fold or eliminated. The stage was thus set for the next great conflict of her reign, but before that confrontation could occur, she had to ensure that the giant threat could never resurface. To that end, the mountaintops of the giants were transformed into a forbidden zone, a region sealed off from the rest of the lands between by both physical barriers and legal prohibition. Marika stationed guards at key passes and choke points, establishing permanent military installations designed to prevent anyone from reaching the forge or attempting to rally any surviving giant sympathizers. The entire region became a frozen wasteland, its few inhabitants consisting only of the soldiers assigned to maintain the quarantine and the occasional exile or criminal desperate enough to brave the harsh conditions and military patrols. Access to the mountaintops required special dispensation from the highest levels of the Golden Order, granted only to those with legitimate business in the region and only under heavy escort. The last giant's curse, a grim echo of Marika's own fate, binds the two figures in a tragic symmetry. As the giant stands eternally vigilant atop the mountaintops of the giants, his purpose twisted into a grotesque parody of guardianship, Marika herself would later find her freedom stripped away, imprisoned within the Erd Tree she once sought to elevate. The giant's ceaseless watch over the flame of ruin mirrors Marika's entrapment, a cruel irony that underscores the cyclical nature of power and punishment in the lands between. The giant's presence, marked by his flayed face and the scars of his defeat, becomes a silent testament to Marika's ruthlessness, a truth concealed from the wider world, but preserved in the annals of those who dare to seek it. The fire monks, once devout guardians of the giant's flame, fled in the wake of their master's downfall. Scattered and fractured, they established isolated sects across the lands between, each grappling with the aftermath of the war in their own way. Some sought to rekindle the flame of ruin, driven by a desperate hope to restore what had been lost. Others, disillusioned by the Golden Order's triumph, embraced heresy, turning to forbidden practices and dark rituals in their quest for meaning. The Monastery of the Flame, once a bastion of unity among the fire monks, became a site of schism, its halls echoing with whispered debates and the clash of ideologies. These divergent paths would later shape the fate of flame magic, as the monks' legacy became entwined with the forbidden knowledge they sought to preserve. The Giant's Forge, a once sacred site of creation and destruction, became a place of pilgrimage for those drawn to the allure of forbidden flame magic. Located deep within the mountaintops of the Giants, the forge stood as a haunting reminder of the Giant's power, its flames still flickering faintly despite the passage of time. Tarnished, those exiles seeking to reclaim the Elden Ring would later journey to this desolate place, drawn by tales of its secrets and the promise of power. The forge's flames, though diminished, retained a fragment of their former potency, offering those who dared to harness them a glimpse of the giant's lost might. Yet the forge was also a place of peril, its guardians fierce and its dangers manifold, ensuring that only the most determined would unlock its mysteries. The last giant's presence, though hidden from the world, was not forgotten. As Tarnished ventured deeper into the lands between, seeking to ascend to the Erd Tree's apex, they would inevitably cross paths with this ancient sentinel. His towering form, scarred and broken, loomed over the mountaintops of the giants, a final obstacle on the path to greatness. Confronting the last giant was a trial of both skill and resolve, as his immense strength and unyielding determination tested even the most seasoned warriors. Yet his defeat revealed more than just a path forward. It unveiled the full tragedy of the giants' genocide, a story of loss and annihilation that had been buried beneath the Golden Order's triumphant narrative. With the last giant's fall, the giants' legacy was extinguished, their heirs lost to time, and their once great civilization reduced to ash. The flame of ruin, once a symbol of the giants' power and defiance, became a relic of a forgotten age. Its purpose, once central to the giants' identity, was lost to history, its flames smoldering faintly as a reminder of what had been. The Golden Order, ever eager to erase the remnants of its enemies, sought to suppress knowledge of the flame, ensuring that its significance would fade into obscurity. Yet the flame's embers endured, hidden in the shadows, and whispered of in hushed tones by those who remembered the giant's struggle. It became a symbol of resistance for those who opposed the Golden Order, a flickering hope that the old ways might one day be rekindled. Marika's war against the giants foreshadowed her later conflicts with other powers that resisted the Golden Order's dominance. Her ruthlessness, exemplified by the flaying of the last giant's face, became a hallmark of her rule, as she sought to crush any threat to her vision of order. The giant's annihilation was not merely a military victory, it was a statement, a warning to all who might defy the Golden Order. Yet this act of brutality also sowed the seeds of future dissent, as the memory of the giant's fate inspired others to rise against Marika's rule. The war against the giants was a pivotal moment in the early Erdtree era, shaping the course of history and setting the stage for the conflicts that would follow. The last giant's flayed face, a grim reminder of Marika's ruthlessness, was concealed from common knowledge, preserved only in the annals of those who dared to seek the truth. This act of mutilation, intended to symbolize the giant's defeat and the Golden Order's supremacy, also served as a chilling testament to Marika's willingness to go to any lengths to secure her rule. The flayed face became a symbol of the cost of defiance, a warning to those who might challenge the Golden Order's authority. Yet it also became a rallying point for those who opposed Marika, a stark reminder of the injustices wrought by her conquest. The era ended with the giants erased as a political force, their flame a smoldering footnote in the Golden Order's history. The mountaintops of the giants, once a place of power and reverence, became a desolate wasteland, its secrets buried beneath the snow and ash. The giants' legacy, though diminished, endured in the memories of those who remembered their struggle, their flame a symbol of resistance and resilience. The war against the giants marked a turning point in the early Erdtree era, as Marika's vision of order began to take shape, built on the ashes of those who had dared to oppose her. Yet even in their defeat, the giants left an indelible mark on the lands between, their flame a reminder that even the mightiest empires can fall. As the Golden Order solidified its dominance, the giants' fate became a cautionary tale, a story of loss and annihilation that echoed through the ages. The flame of ruin, though diminished, endured as a symbol of defiance, its embers a testament to the giants' unyielding spirit. The war against the giants was not merely a military campaign, it was a defining moment in the history of the lands between, shaping the course of events and setting the stage for the conflicts that would follow. The giants' legacy, though buried beneath the Golden Order's triumphant narrative, endured in the shadows, a flickering hope that the old ways might one day be rekindled. The last giant's curse, a grim echo of Marika's own fate, binds the two figures in a tragic symmetry. As the giant stands eternally vigilant atop the mountaintops of the giants, his purpose twisted into a grotesque parody of guardianship, Marika herself would later find her freedom stripped away, imprisoned within the Erdtree she once sought to elevate. The giant's ceaseless watch over the flame of ruin mirrors Marika's entrapment, a cruel irony that underscores the cyclical nature of power and punishment in the lands between. The giant's presence, marked by his flayed face and the scars of his defeat, becomes a silent testament to Marika's ruthlessness, a truth concealed from the wider world, but preserved in the annals of those who dare to seek it. The fire monks, once devout guardians of the giant's flame, fled in the wake of their master's downfall. Scattered and fractured, they established isolated sects across the lands between, each grappling with the aftermath of the war in their own way. Some sought to rekindle the flame of ruin, driven by a desperate hope to restore what had been lost. Others, disillusioned by the Golden Order's triumph, embraced heresy, turning to forbidden practices and dark rituals in their quest for meaning. The Monastery of the Flame, once a bastion of unity among the fire monks, became a site of schism, its halls echoing with whispered debates and the clash of ideologies. These divergent paths would later shape the fate of flame magic, as the monks' legacy became entwined with the forbidden knowledge they sought to preserve. The Giant's Forge, a once sacred site of creation and destruction, became a place of pilgrimage for those drawn to the allure of forbidden flame magic. Located deep within the mountaintops of the giants, the forge stood as a haunting reminder of the giant's power, its flames still flickering faintly despite the passage of time. Tarnished, those exiles seeking to reclaim the Elden Ring would later journey to this desolate place, drawn by tales of its secrets and the promise of power. The forge's flames, though diminished, retained a fragment of their former potency, offering those who dared to harness them a glimpse of the giant's lost might. Yet the forge was also a place of peril, its guardians fierce and its dangers manifold, ensuring that only the most determined would unlock its mysteries. The last giant's presence, though hidden from the world, was not forgotten. As Tarnished ventured deeper into the lands between, seeking to ascend to the Erdtree's apex, they would inevitably cross paths with this ancient sentinel. His towering form, scarred and broken, loomed over the mountaintops of the giants, a final obstacle on the path to greatness. Confronting the last giant was a trial of both skill and resolve, as his immense strength and unyielding determination tested even the most seasoned warriors. Yet, his defeat revealed more than just a path forward. It unveiled the full tragedy of the giants' genocide, a story of loss and annihilation that had been buried beneath the Golden Order's triumphant narrative. With the last giant's fall, the giants' legacy was extinguished, their heirs lost to time, and their once great civilization reduced to ash. The flame of ruin, once a symbol of the giants' power and defiance, became a relic of a forgotten age. Its purpose, once central to the giants' identity, was lost to history, its flames smoldering faintly as a reminder of what had been. The Golden Order, ever eager to erase the remnants of its enemies, sought to suppress knowledge of the flame, ensuring that its significance would fade into obscurity. Yet the flame's embers endured, hidden in the shadows, and whispered of in hushed tones by those who remembered the giant's struggle. It became a symbol of resistance for those who opposed the Golden Order, a flickering hope that the old ways might one day be rekindled. Marika's war against the giants foreshadowed her later conflicts with other powers that resisted the Golden Order's dominance. Her ruthlessness, exemplified by the flaying of the last giant's face, became a hallmark of her rule, as she sought to crush any threat to her vision of order. The giant's annihilation was not merely a military victory, it was a statement, a warning to all who might defy the Golden Order. Yet this act of brutality also sowed the seeds of future dissent, as the memory of the giant's fate inspired others to rise against Marika's rule. The war against the giants was a pivotal moment in the early Erdtree era, shaping the course of history and setting the stage for the conflicts that would follow. The last giant's flayed face, a grim reminder of Marika's ruthlessness, was concealed from common knowledge, preserved only in the annals of those who dared to seek the truth. This act of mutilation, intended to symbolize the giant's defeat and the Golden Order's supremacy, also served as a chilling testament to Marika's willingness to go to any lengths to secure her rule. The flayed face became a symbol of the cost of defiance, a warning to those who might challenge the Golden Order's authority. Yet it also became a rallying point for those who opposed Marika, a stark reminder of the injustices wrought by her conquest. The era ended with the giants erased as a political force, their flame a smoldering footnote in the Golden Order's history. The mountaintops of the giants, once a place of power and reverence, became a desolate wasteland, its secrets buried beneath the snow and ash. The giants' legacy, though diminished, endured in the memories of those who remembered their struggle, their flame a symbol of resistance and resilience. The war against the giants marked a turning point in the early Erdtree era, as Marika's vision of order began to take shape, built on the ashes of those who had dared to oppose her. Yet even in their defeat, the giants left an indelible mark on the lands between, their flame a reminder that even the mightiest empires can fall. As the Erdtree's golden light began to solidify its dominion over the lands between, the Mid-Erdtree era marked a pivotal turning point in the Golden Order's campaign to reshape the world in its image. This era, defined by the consolidation of Marika's divine rule and the systematic suppression of older competing ideologies, saw the Golden Order take decisive action against forces it deemed heretical or threatening to its vision of eternal life. Chief among these threats was the ancient worship of death, a practice deeply rooted in the lands between long before the Erdtree's ascendancy. It was during this time that the Golden Order moved to seal away one of the most enigmatic and powerful figures tied to this primordial death worship, the twin bird, mother of the deathbirds. The twin bird, a mysterious entity often depicted as a two-headed avian figure, was revered as a symbol of life and death in balance. This duality reflected a worldview starkly opposed to the Golden Order's doctrine, which sought to banish death entirely through the Erdtree's grace. The twin bird's followers believed in a cyclical understanding of existence, where death was not an end but a transformation, a return to an ancient, sacred order. This belief system, embodied by the twin bird, posed a direct challenge to the Golden Order's narrative of eternal life under Marika's rule. To suppress this ideology, the Golden Order enacted a bold and decisive measure, the sealing of the twin bird itself. This act was not merely a physical imprisonment, but a symbolic gesture, a declaration that the old ways of death worship would no longer be tolerated. The sealing of the twin bird marked the beginning of the Golden Order's dominance over death related practices, but it also had profound consequences for the lands between. The twin bird's offspring, the death birds, emerged as lesser guardians of the old death rituals scattered across the realm in hidden locations. These eerie, skeletal creatures, often found in desolate ruins or forgotten catacombs, were remnants of a bygone era, carrying the torch of their mother's legacy. The Deathbirds were not mere beasts. They were custodians of Ghost Flame, a mystical fire tied to the ancient rites of death. Ghost Flame, with its pale, spectral hue, symbolized the transformative power of death, a stark contrast to the golden light of the Erd Tree. It was a remnant of the pre-Erd Tree era, a time when death was not feared but revered as a sacred force. The Golden Order, ever vigilant in its mission to eradicate heresy, declared Ghost Flame heretical and sought to eliminate its influence wherever it appeared. This campaign was part of a broader effort to erase all traces of the old death worship, ensuring that the Erd Tree's grace remained unchallenged. However, Ghost Flame proved difficult to extinguish completely. Its presence lingered in hidden corners of the lands between, preserved by the Deathbirds and their rituals. These creatures, though diminished in power compared to their mother, continued to spread Ghost Flame in secret, ensuring that the ancient practices of death worship were not entirely forgotten. One of the most significant manifestations of this ancient legacy was the Deathrite bird, a powerful descendant of the twin bird. This formidable entity, far larger and more menacing than its lesser kin, guarded the remnants of ancient death rituals in the mountaintops of the giants. The Deathrite bird's appearance was a direct link to the pre-Erd Tree era, a time when death was worshipped as a sacred and inevitable part of existence. Its presence in the mountaintops, a region already steeped in mystery and danger, made this area a focal point for the Golden Order's efforts to suppress the old ways. The mountaintops, with their harsh, unforgiving terrain and their ties to the fire giants, became a forbidden zone, a place where the Golden Order's influence was tenuous at best. The Deathrite bird's role as a guardian of ancient death rituals made it a target for the Golden Order's knights, who were dispatched to the mountaintops with orders to eliminate the creature and eradicate its heretical practices. These knights, armed with the blessings of the Erd Tree and trained in the art of combat against the forces of death, ventured into the treacherous terrain with a sense of purpose. However, the Deathrite bird proved to be a formidable adversary. Its mastery of Ghost Flame and its connection to the ancient rites of death granting it immense power. The knight's efforts to defeat the creature ended in failure, reinforcing the Deathrite bird's status as a guardian of the old ways. The failure of the Golden Order's knights to suppress the Deathrite bird had far-reaching implications. It underscored the resilience of the ancient death worship, even in the face of the Golden Order's overwhelming power. The Deathrite bird's continued presence in the mountaintops served as a reminder that the old ways had not been entirely extinguished, that the cycle of life and death still held sway in certain corners of the lands between. This failure also highlighted the limitations of the Golden Order's doctrine, which sought to deny death rather than understand it. The Deathrite bird, with its mastery of Ghost Flame and its ties to the ancient rituals, represented a challenge to the Golden Order's vision of eternal life, a challenge that could not be easily dismissed. As the Mid-Erd Tree era progressed, the sealing of the Twin Bird and the emergence of the Deathbirds and the Deathrite Bird marked a critical chapter in the Golden Order's campaign to reshape the lands between. These events highlighted the tension between the old ways and the new, between the worship of death and the promise of eternal life under the Erd Tree's grace. The Golden Order's efforts to suppress the ancient death rituals were met with resistance, not only from the creatures tied to these practices, but also from the very land itself, which seemed to preserve the memory of the old ways in its hidden corners. The Deathrite Bird, standing tall in the mountaintops of the giants, became a symbol of this resistance, a testament to the enduring power of the ancient death worship. The Golden Order's failure to defeat the Deathrite Bird also had political and ideological ramifications. It exposed cracks in the Order's seemingly unassailable authority, revealing that there were forces in the lands between that could not be easily controlled or eradicated. This realization forced the Golden Order to reassess its strategies, to consider new ways of dealing with the remnants of the old death worship. The Order's response to this challenge would shape the course of its rule in the years to come, influencing its interactions with other factions and its approach to the ever-present threat of heresy. In the broader context of the Lands Between's history, the sealing of the Twin Bird and the emergence of the Deathbirds and the Deathrite Bird represented a turning point in the struggle between the old ways and the new. These events highlighted the resilience of the ancient death worship, its ability to persist even in the face of overwhelming opposition. They also underscored the complexity of the Golden Order's mission, the challenges it faced in its quest to impose its vision of eternal life on a world steeped in the traditions of death. The Deathrite Bird, with its mastery of ghost flame and its ties to the ancient rituals, stood as a powerful reminder of the old ways, a symbol of the cycle of life and death that the Golden Order sought to deny. As the Mid-Erd Tree era continued, the legacy of the Twin Bird and its descendants would continue to shape the lands between, influencing the actions of both the Golden Order and those who resisted its rule. The Deathbirds, scattered across the realm, would continue to spread ghost flame in hidden locations, preserving the ancient rites of death for those who still believed in their power. The Deathrite Bird, standing tall in the mountaintops of the giants, would remain a guardian of the old ways, a symbol of the enduring power of the ancient death worship. These creatures, tied to the Twin Bird and the old rituals, would continue to challenge the Golden Order's vision of eternal life, ensuring that the cycle of life and death remained a part of the Lands Between story. The sealing of the Twin Bird and the emergence of the Deathbirds and the Deathrite Bird marked a critical chapter in the history of the Lands Between, a chapter defined by the struggle between the old ways and the new. These events highlighted the resilience of the ancient death worship, its ability to persist even in the face of overwhelming opposition. They also underscored the complexity of the Golden Order's mission, the challenges it faced in its quest to impose its vision of eternal life on a world steeped in the traditions of death. The Deathrite Bird, with its mastery of ghost flame and its ties to the ancient rituals, stood as a powerful reminder of the old ways, a symbol of the cycle of life and death that the Golden Order sought to deny. The Golden Order, ever vigilant in its pursuit of absolute control, soon recognized the threat posed by the Deathrite Bird's ghost flame. Unlike the ghost flame wielded by the lesser Deathbirds, which was potent but manageable, the Deathrite Bird's ghost flame burned with an intensity that defied comprehension. This was no mere flame of death. It was a force that seemed to embody the very essence of mortality, a power that could not be easily suppressed or co-opted. The Golden Order, built upon the foundation of the Erd Tree's immortality and the eternal Queen Marika's divine rule, could not afford to ignore such a threat. Thus, they began a calculated campaign to erase the twin bird and the death birds from the annals of history. Official records were purged, and any mention of these entities was systematically removed. The twin bird, once revered as a symbol of duality in death and life, was relegated to obscurity, its existence whispered only in hushed tones among those who dared to remember. This erasure was not merely an act of historical revisionism, it was a strategic move to sever the connection between the Deathbirds and their ghost flame. The Golden Order's scholars, tasked with understanding the nature of this flame, discovered something deeply unsettling. Ghost flame had the power to harm the Erd Tree itself. This revelation was nothing short of catastrophic for the Golden Order. The Erd Tree, the sacred symbol of their dominion and the source of their immortality, was not invulnerable. Ghost flame, born of the twin bird's ancient power, could burn away the Erd Tree's influence, weakening its hold on the lands between. This posed an existential threat to the Golden Order's authority, for if the Erd Tree's power could be diminished, so too could their divine mandate. In response, the Golden Order commissioned a clandestine project to study Ghost Flame, hoping to harness its power for their own ends. This endeavor was led by a select group of scholars, many of whom were drawn from the ranks of the Academy of Raya Lucaria. These scholars, cloaked in secrecy, conducted their experiments in hidden laboratories far from the prying eyes of the public. Their goal was ambitious, to unravel the mysteries of Ghost Flame and bend it to the Golden Order's will. Yet as their research progressed, they encountered insurmountable obstacles. Ghost Flame, they concluded, was intrinsically tied to the twin bird, an entity whose essence could not be replicated or controlled. The flame was not merely a tool or a weapon, it was a manifestation of the twin bird's will, a force that resisted subjugation. This realization marked a turning point in the Golden Order's approach to Ghost Flame. If it could not be controlled, it had to be eradicated. The Golden Order's leadership, fearing the implications of their scholars' findings, issued a decree banning all further study of Ghost Flame. This ban was enforced with ruthless efficiency. Laboratories were dismantled, research materials were destroyed, and scholars who persisted in their inquiries were branded as heretics. The Golden Order sought to extinguish not only the flame itself, but also the knowledge of its existence. Yet despite their efforts, Ghost Flame could not be so easily forgotten. Its power lingered in the collective memory of those who had witnessed its destructive potential, and the Deathrite bird, once a forgotten relic of an ancient age, began to emerge as a symbol of resistance. For those who chafed under the Golden Order's rigid control over death, the Deathrite bird represented a return to a more primal understanding of mortality. Where the Golden Order sought to deny death, to render it a mere inconvenience in the cycle of rebirth, the Deathrite bird embraced it as an essential force of nature. Its ghost flame, untamed and uncontrollable, became a beacon for those who sought to challenge the Golden Order's hegemony. Secret cults began to form, their members drawn from the disenfranchised and the disillusioned. These cults, operating in the shadows, revived ancient death rituals that had been suppressed for generations. They gathered in hidden locations, far from the Golden Order's reach, to worship the Deathrite bird and invoke its ghost flame. These rituals were not merely acts of devotion, they were acts of defiance, a rejection of the Golden Order's dogma. The Golden Order, ever vigilant, could not ignore the rise of these cults. Labeling them as heretical, they launched a series of purges aimed at eliminating any trace of their influence. Whole villages suspected of harboring cultists were razed, and those accused of heresy were subjected to brutal interrogations. The purges were designed not only to eradicate the cults, but also to instill fear in anyone who might consider joining them. Yet despite the Golden Order's efforts, the cults persisted. Their resilience was a testament to the enduring allure of the Deathrite bird and the power it represented. Amidst this conflict, rumors began to circulate that the Deathrite bird's ghost flame held the power to resurrect the dead. These rumors, though unproven, added a new layer of intrigue to the cult's activities. If true, such a power would render the Golden Order's control over death meaningless. Resurrection, the ultimate denial of mortality, could undermine the very foundation of their authority. The Golden Order, unable to confirm or deny these rumors, treated them with the utmost seriousness. Yet the truth remained elusive. Whether the Deathrite bird's ghost flame truly possessed the power to resurrect the dead, or whether this was merely a myth propagated by its worshippers, is a question that remains unanswered. The sealing of the Deathrite, as this era came to be known, was marked by a profound tension between the Golden Order's desire to control death and the enduring power of the Deathrite bird's ghost flame. This conflict, though largely hidden from public view, shaped the course of history in ways that would reverberate for centuries to come. The Golden Order's attempts to suppress Ghost Flame and eliminate its adherents were met with resistance at every turn, a testament to the resilience of those who sought to preserve the ancient ways. In the end, the Deathrite bird stood as a symbol of defiance, a reminder that even the most powerful empires could not extinguish the primal forces of life and death. As the Golden Order tightened its grip on the lands between, the Deathrite bird's ghost flame continued to burn in the hearts of those who dared to challenge its authority. The cults, though driven underground, remained a potent force, their rituals a silent rebellion against the Golden Order's dominion. The sealing of the Deathrite was not merely an act of suppression, it was a testament to the enduring power of the Twin Bird's legacy, a legacy that would continue to shape the fate of the lands between long after the Golden Order's reign had ended. As the Golden Order's grip on the lands between tightened during the Mid-Erdtree era, their efforts to suppress the remnants of the Deathrite bird's influence escalated into outright militarized containment. The mountaintops of the Giants, already a forbidden zone due to their association with the Fire Giants and the Fell God, were now sealed with even greater fervor. Barricades of sacred light, reinforced by the Two Fingers decrees, were erected along the paths leading upward, ensuring that none could reach the Deathrite bird's domain without facing the full might of the Golden Order. This was not merely a precaution, it was an act of ideological warfare, a denial of the very existence of a death that did not serve the Erdtree. Yet the Deathbirds, lesser kin to the Deathrite bird, refused to vanish entirely. These spectral creatures, embodiments of a time when death was marked by ghost flame rather than golden roots, continued to appear sporadically across the lands between. Their presence was most often reported in the mist-shrouded ruins of the Weeping Peninsula or the desolate graveyards of Lurnia, places where the Erdtree's light grew thin. Each sighting was a defiance, a flicker of the old ways persisting despite the Golden Order's dominance. The ghost flame they carried, a pale, cold fire that consumed not flesh, but the soul itself, left behind patches of blighted land where not even the Erdtree's grace could take root. Over time, the Twin Bird's imprisonment beneath the mountaintops began to weaken. The Golden Order's seals, though potent, were not infallible. Cracks formed in their metaphysical barriers, allowing traces of the Twin Bird's influence to seep back into the world. These manifestations were subtle at first, whispers among the dead, the faint scent of burning feathers in the wind, or the occasional vision of a two-headed avian shadow cast by no visible source. But to those who still remembered the old death rites, outcasts, heretics, or the rare scholar who dared to study the forbidden, these signs were unmistakable. The Twin Bird's presence, though diminished, was stirring. Alarmed by these developments, the Golden Order intensified its campaign to eradicate all remnants of pre-Erdtree death worship. The Round Table Hold, acting as the Order's executive arm, dispatched inquisitors to root out any who still practiced the old ways. Villages suspected of harboring Deathbird cultists were purged, their inhabitants either converted or silenced. The Carians, though largely focused on their own lunar doctrines, were pressured to assist in these efforts, their sorcerers uniquely suited to detecting the telltale residues of ghost flame. Even the nomadic merchants, often accused of trafficking in forbidden knowledge, found themselves under increased scrutiny. The most pressing concern, however, was the gradual spread of the deathrite bird's ghost flame beyond the mountain tops. Reports began to surface of entire settlements consumed by the pale fire, their inhabitants reduced to withered husks, their souls seemingly devoured. The Golden Order's scholars, led by figures like Brother Corin, theorized that the ghost flame was not merely a weapon, but a sustenance, a means for the deathrite bird to sustain itself in a world that had rejected it. This revelation turned concern into outright panic. If the deathrite bird could feed on the living, then its influence was not just a relic of the past, but an active, growing threat. In response, the Golden Order commissioned the creation of sacred weapons specifically designed to combat ghost flame. These armaments are forged by the finest smiths of Lanedell and blessed by the fingers, were imbued with the essence of the Erd tree's light. The Golden Epitaph, a straight sword said to be crafted from the husk of a fallen minor Erd tree, was one such weapon. Its blade radiated a golden aura capable of dispersing ghost flame upon contact. Similarly, the inseparable sword, wielded by the noble D, was another tool of this holy arsenal, its edge honed to sever the ties between the living and the deathbird's influence. These weapons were distributed to an elite cadre of knights, hand-picked for their unwavering loyalty to the Golden Order. Among them were the likes of the Crucible Knights, whose primordial strength made them ideal hunters of the supernatural, and the newly formed Order of the Hallowed Hunt, a specialized force tasked with tracking and exterminating deathbirds wherever they appeared. These knights operated with near autonomous authority, their missions often shrouded in secrecy to prevent panic among the populace. Their successes were celebrated quietly within the Round Table hold, their failures buried just as discreetly. Yet the more the Golden Order learned about the Deathrite bird's rituals, the more horrifying the truth became. Interrogations of captured cultists revealed that the ghost flame's spread was not accidental, it was deliberate. The Deathrite bird required sacrifices, living beings offered to the flame to sustain its power. These sacrifices were not random. They were chosen, often individuals with a strong connection to the Erd tree, as if the Deathrite bird sought to spite its jailers by consuming those they held dear. The most chilling accounts spoke of deathmark rituals, where victims were branded with a sigil that slowly drained their vitality, turning them into unwilling kindling for the ghost flame. The Golden Order's response was swift and absolute. The Deathrite bird and its followers were declared enemies of the Erd tree, their existence deemed incompatible with the Order's vision of a world governed by grace. A formal decree, issued by Queen Marika herself, vowed their complete eradication, not just in the present, but for all time. This was no longer a matter of containment. It was a crusade. The Two Fingers sanctioned the use of previously forbidden arts, including the incantations of the giant's flame, to scour the land of the Deathrite bird's influence. Even the Dung Eater, a figure otherwise reviled by the Golden Order, was rumored to have been approached for his expertise in curses, though whether he cooperated remains a subject of debate among historians. By the end of this phase of the conflict, the Golden Order had succeeded in pushing the Deathrite bird's influence back to the fringes of the lands between. But their victory was not without cost. The sheer brutality of their methods alienated some of their own, sowing seeds of dissent that would later grow into full-blown schisms. And though the Deathrite bird itself remained imprisoned beneath the mountaintops, its ghost flame flickered on in hidden places, a reminder that some fires could not be fully extinguished. The stage was set for the next phase of this ancient struggle, one that would see the boundaries between life, death, and rebellion tested to their limits. As the Erd tree's golden light began to wane in the late stages of the Erd tree era, a period that marked the prelude to the shattering. The lands between witnessed the gradual decline of one of its most ancient and enigmatic figures, the ancestor spirit. This ethereal being, revered by the ancestral followers of the Seofra River region, stood as a stark contrast to the Erd tree's grace, embodying a cycle of rebirth and renewal that predated the Golden Order's ascendancy. To understand the fall of the ancestor spirit is to delve into a time when the Erd tree's dominance was not yet absolute, and alternative belief systems still thrived in the shadows of its golden boughs. The ancestral followers, a people deeply connected to the natural world, worshipped the ancestor spirit as a guardian of life's cyclical nature. Their rituals, conducted in the Hallowhorn grounds, were elaborate ceremonies designed to honor the spirit and ensure the continuation of their traditions. The Hallowhorn grounds, a sacred site nestled within the Siofra River region, became the heart of their spiritual practices. Here, they would gather to offer tributes and perform rites that invoked the ancestor spirit's blessings, believing it to be the source of their people's vitality and resilience. The ancestor spirit, in turn, was seen as a living embodiment of the land itself, a force that transcended the mortal realm and connected the ancestral followers to the ancient cycles of life and death. This belief system stood in direct opposition to the Golden Order's doctrine, which posited the Erd tree as the singular source of grace and salvation. While the Erd tree represented permanence and divine favor, the ancestor spirit symbolized the inevitability of change and the necessity of renewal. This philosophical divide would eventually bring the ancestral followers into conflict with the Golden Order, but for a time the two coexisted in an uneasy balance. The ancestor spirit's influence was particularly strong in Nokron, the Eternal City, a subterranean metropolis that lay hidden beneath the Siofra River. Nokron's existence predated the Erd Tree, and its inhabitants had long revered the ancestor spirit as a central figure in their cosmology. The spirit's presence in Nokron was a testament to an ancient belief system that had flourished long before the Golden Order's rise to power. The ancestral followers guarded the Hallowhorn grounds with unwavering devotion, ensuring that the path to the ancestor spirit remained protected from outsiders. Their vigilance was not merely a matter of spiritual duty, but also a necessity born of the growing encroachment of the Golden Order. Queen Marika, the reigning deity of the Golden Order, sought to consolidate her power by unifying the lands between under a single faith. This ambition led to the suppression of alternative beliefs, including the worship of the ancestor spirit. The Golden Order's influence began to spread, marginalizing those who adhered to older traditions and forcing them to retreat further into the shadows. As the Erd tree's dominance grew, the ancestral followers found themselves increasingly isolated. The Hallowhorn grounds, once a bustling center of communal activity, became a sanctuary for those who sought to preserve their heritage in the face of persecution. The Golden Order's agents, driven by their zeal to eradicate heresy, viewed the ancestral followers as a threat to their vision of a unified world. This tension culminated in a series of skirmishes and confrontations as the Golden Order sought to assert its authority over the Seofra River region. Despite these challenges, the ancestral followers remained steadfast in their devotion to the ancestor spirit, determined to safeguard their traditions from the encroaching tide of Erd tree worship. The Hallowhorn grounds, protected by the ancestral followers' vigilance, remained a sacred site untouched by the Golden Order's influence. This preservation was no small feat, given the Order's relentless efforts to suppress alternative belief systems. The ancestral followers' ability to maintain their rituals and protect the path to the ancestor spirit was a testament to their resilience and the enduring power of their faith. Yet, even as they succeeded in preserving their traditions, the broader world around them was changing. The Erd tree's golden light cast a long shadow over the lands between, and the worship of the ancestor spirit was increasingly relegated to the fringes of society. The ancestor spirit's fall was not a sudden event, but a gradual process shaped by the shifting tides of power in the lands between. As the Golden Order consolidated its dominance, the ancestral followers' influence waned, and their once thriving community became a relic of a bygone era. The spirit itself, though still revered by its followers, was increasingly seen as a symbol of a world that had been supplanted by the Erd Tree's grace. This transition marked a pivotal moment in the history of the lands between, as the old ways gave way to the new, and the ancestor spirit's role as a symbol of rebirth and renewal was overshadowed by the Erd Tree's promise of eternal salvation. In the late Erd Tree era, as the shattering loomed on the horizon, the ancestral followers' retreat into the Siofra River region became a poignant reminder of the fragility of their traditions. The Hollowhorn grounds, though still a sacred site, stood as a testament to a world that was slowly fading away. The ancestor spirit, once a central figure in the cosmology of Nokron and the ancestral followers, became a hidden presence, its influence diminished, but not extinguished. This period of decline set the stage for the events that would follow, as the lands between teetered on the brink of chaos, and the old ways sought to find their place in a world dominated by the Erd Tree's golden light. The fall of the ancestor spirit was not merely the end of a belief system, but a reflection of the broader changes sweeping across the lands between. As the Golden Order's influence grew, the ancestral followers' traditions became increasingly marginalized, and the spirit they revered was forced into the shadows. Yet even in this time of decline, the ancestor spirit's legacy endured, a reminder of the cyclical nature of life and the enduring power of ancient beliefs. The Hollowhorn grounds, though isolated and besieged, remained a beacon of hope for those who sought to preserve their heritage in the face of overwhelming change. As we delve deeper into this era, it becomes clear that the fall of the ancestor spirit was not an isolated event, but part of a larger narrative of transformation and conflict. The ancestral followers' struggle to protect their traditions, the Golden Order's efforts to consolidate its power, and the shifting balance of belief systems all played a role in shaping the fate of the lands between. The ancestor spirit's decline marked the end of an era, but it also set the stage for the events that would follow as the world prepared for the upheaval of the shattering. In the next part of our exploration, we will examine the final stages of this decline and the ultimate fate of the ancestor spirit as the lands between stood on the precipice of profound change. As the shattering prelude sent tremors through the foundations of the Golden Order, cracks appeared in more than just the political landscape of the lands between. The ancestral followers, long suppressed beneath the Erd Tree's dominion, sensed opportunity in the growing instability. Their rituals at the Hollowhorn grounds took on new urgency, the echoing horn blasts now carrying further across the mist-shrouded hills of Limgrave. These were not mere memorials to the past, but active summoning cries, attempts to rouse the slumbering ancestor spirit from its celestial rest. Deep within Nokron, the eternal city, the resting place of the ancestor spirit pulsed with renewed energy. This underground necropolis, built by an ancient civilization that predated even the age of the Erd Tree, had always maintained a tenuous connection to the stars above. The ancestral followers understood what modern scholars had forgotten, that the ancestor spirit wasn't merely a local deity, but a manifestation of cosmic cycles older than Marika's reign. Its antlers, branching like celestial constellations, served as conduits for stellar energy, and its very essence was tied to the movements of heavenly bodies that the Golden Order had tried to erase from history. The ancestral followers' practices represented a fundamental challenge to the Golden Order's monopoly on life and death. Where the Erdtree promised controlled rebirth through its golden grace, the ancestral followers sought a wilder, more primal cycle. Their horn amulets, carved from the remains of previous summonings, contained fragments of the spirit's power, enough to briefly manifest spectral deer that carried the essence of the dead. These were not the orderly reincarnations of the Erdtree, but unpredictable bursts of life energy that followed older celestial patterns. As the Golden Order's influence waned, more souls turned to these forbidden practices, seeking alternatives to a system that was clearly failing. The Hallowhorn grounds became a battleground of ideologies during this period. While the ancestral followers performed their rituals undisturbed for centuries, the shattering prelude brought new attention to their practices. Tarnished seeking power, scholars hunting forbidden knowledge, and even agents of the Two Fingers all converged on the sacred site. The nomadic merchants, who had long maintained an uneasy truce with the ancestral followers, found themselves caught in the middle, their own connection to the spirit through the Aesir coat, marking them as both targets and potential mediators. The ground became littered with the remains of these clashes: broken spirit horns, shattered merchant carts, and the distinctive arrows fletched with ancestral follower feathers. Nokron's hidden location had protected the ancestor spirit's resting place for ages, but the seismic shifts of the late Erdtree era changed that. The collapse of divine order caused previously sealed pathways to crumble, revealing access points to the Eternal City that hadn't been traversed in generations. The most determined seekers, particularly those aligned with Rani the Witch and her quest to overthrow the Golden Order, began piecing together clues from surviving Nox artifacts and celestial maps. They understood that the ancestor spirit's power might hold keys to challenging Marika's legacy, making its resting place a strategic prize worth fighting for. The ancestral followers mounted a fierce defense of their sacred sites. At the Siofra River's banks, where the waters reflected the eternal stars above, they deployed their most skilled warriors, ancestors animated through ritual, their bodies adorned with intricate horned helms and flowing spirit mantles. These guardians wielded weapons infused with celestial energy, their arrows capable of phasing through armor to strike at the soul directly. The underground waterways became treacherous killing zones, where the followers' intimate knowledge of the terrain gave them the advantage against intruders. Their defense wasn't just about protecting a deity, it was about preserving a way of existence that predated and potentially outlasted the current age. What these interlopers discovered, when they finally breached Nokron's inner sanctums, was that the ancestor spirit's power operated on principles fundamentally alien to Erdtree theology. The spirit didn't respond to prayers or supplications in the traditional sense. It moved to celestial rhythms, its appearances tied to specific alignments of stars that the ancestral followers had meticulously charted over generations. The antlered skull resting in the Hallowhorn grounds wasn't merely a relic, but a kind of astrological instrument, its branching patterns mirroring constellations that only appeared once every few centuries. This revelation shook those Golden Order scholars who witnessed it, proving that life could be governed by forces outside Marika's design. The spirit's appearances during this period became more frequent and more intense. Where before it might manifest as brief spectral visions during rituals, now entire sections of Nokron would flicker between reality and some starlit otherworld, with the fully realized spirit moving through the ruins like a living constellation. Those who witnessed these events reported strange phenomena: wounds that healed in reverse, memories surfacing from past lives, and the sense of time flowing differently in the spirit's presence. The ancestral followers interpreted this as a sign that the old order was returning, that the cosmic cycle was turning back to an age before the Erdtree's golden light dominated the skies. Meanwhile, the political implications of the ancestor spirit's resurgence sent shockwaves through the remaining power structures of the lands between. The Two Fingers, desperate to maintain control, declared the ancestral followers and their practices heretical, though they lacked the military might to enforce this edict completely. Rani's faction, by contrast, saw potential allies in these star aligned worshippers, recognizing shared opposition to the Golden Order's tyranny. Even the remaining demigods took notice. Rumors suggest Morgoth sent agents to investigate, while Miquella's followers quietly collected ancestral follower artifacts for study. The spirit's growing influence manifested physically across the lands between. Certain areas, particularly where ancient star worship had been strongest, began exhibiting strange reversals of the Erd tree's effects. In these zones, the golden leaves would wither while silver blue moss spread across tree trunks, and spectral deer could be seen drinking from pools that reflected star filled skies even at midday. The ancestral followers claimed these were remembered places, locations where the world was recalling its older, truer nature now that the Erd tree's dominance was fading. As the shattering prelude reached its crescendo, the ancestor spirit's appearances took on an ominous new characteristic. Where before it had moved with serene grace, now its manifestations sometimes turned violent, goring intruders with antlers that burned with cold stellar fire. The ancestral followers interpreted this as the spirit defending its territory, but others wondered if it might be reacting to some impending celestial event. Scrolls recovered from Nokron's ruins spoke of a great alignment coming, when certain stars would converge in a pattern last seen during the age before the Erd Tree. The ancestral followers prepared for this moment with feverish intensity, believing it might herald their deity's full return to power. The final defense of Nokron became a microcosm of the larger struggles shaking the lands between. As various factions clashed in the underground ruins, the ancestral followers deployed their most sacred relics, the regal ancestor spirit, an evolved form of their deity that manifested as a towering, antlered specter wreathed in blue flame. This being didn't merely represent their ancestor, it channeled the full power of the celestial cycles they worshipped. Its every movement synced to some grand cosmic rhythm invisible to outsiders. Those who faced it described an overwhelming sense of smallness, as if standing before the turning gears of the universe itself. What none of the combatants realized was that their struggle was being observed by forces beyond their understanding. The falling star beasts, the Nox priests in their hidden towers, even the outer gods themselves, all took note of the ancestor spirit's resurgence. In the grand cosmic game being played across the lands between, this ancient power's return represented a wild card that could upset carefully laid plans centuries in the making. The ancestral followers believed they were fighting to restore their traditions, but in truth, they had become pawns in a much larger conflict, one that would soon erupt into the full chaos of the shattering. The defeat of the ancestor spirit by a tarnished marked not only the end of a powerful being, but also the unraveling of an ancient tradition deeply tied to the land of the lands between. This creature, revered by the ancestral followers of the Siofra River, was more than a guardian. It was a symbol of a cycle of rebirth that predated the Erd Tree itself. Its connection to the old ways of rebirth was laid bare in its final moments, as the tarnished who struck it down witnessed the ethereal energies that flowed from its form, energies that spoke of a time when life was renewed, not through the grace of the Erd Tree, but through the stars. This revelation underscored the ancestor spirit's role as a bridge to a forgotten era, a time when the cosmos itself dictated the rhythm of life and death. The ancestral followers, who had long revered the ancestor spirit as a sacred embodiment of their traditions, were plunged into mourning. For them, the creature's demise was not just the loss of a protector, but the collapse of a way of life. The ancestor spirit's ability to facilitate rebirth through the stars was central to their rituals, and its death signaled the potential end of these practices. The followers, clad in their ritualistic garb and adorned with antlers symbolizing their connection to the spirit, gathered in the Hallowhorn grounds to lament their loss. Their cries echoed through the cavernous expanse of the Seofra River, a haunting reminder of a culture teetering on the brink of extinction. Fear gripped them, not only for their immediate future, but for the preservation of their identity in a world increasingly dominated by the Golden Order. The Golden Order, the governing force of the lands. During the late Erdtree era, had long sought to suppress alternative beliefs and practices that challenged its hegemony. The defeat of the ancestor spirit was not merely a personal triumph for the tarnished, but a victory for the Golden Order's ideology. By eliminating a symbol of star-aligned rebirth, the Order further cemented its narrative that the Erdtree's grace was the only legitimate source of renewal. This act of suppression was part of a broader campaign to erase the remnants of the old ways, ensuring that no alternative to the Erdtree's dominance could take root. The ancestor spirit's fall was thus a microcosm of the Order's intolerance, a stark reminder of its willingness to destroy anything that threatened its supremacy. In the aftermath of the ancestor spirit's defeat, the Hollowhorn grounds, once a vibrant hub of ancestral worship, fell into disrepair. The followers, bereft of their guiding spirit, struggled to maintain the sanctity of their sacred site. The grounds, with their towering antler effigies and intricate carvings depicting the cycles of rebirth, began to crumble under the weight of neglect. The decay of the Hollowhorn grounds mirrored the broader decline of the ancestral followers' culture, a poignant symbol of their diminishing influence in a world increasingly shaped by the Golden Order. Yet even as their physical spaces deteriorated, the spiritual essence of the ancestor spirit endured, lingering in the air like a whisper of defiance. Though the ancestor spirit was gone, its legacy persisted in the Seofra River, inspiring resistance against the Golden Order. The ancestral followers, though diminished in number, continued to honor the spirit's memory in secret, preserving their rituals and passing down their knowledge through generations. These clandestine gatherings, held in the shadowed recesses of the river's caverns, kept the flame of their traditions alive. The ancestor spirit's story became a rallying cry for those who sought to challenge the Golden Order's dominance, a testament to the enduring power of belief in the face of oppression. The spirit's existence, though extinguished, served as a reminder that alternatives to the Erdtree's grace still lingered in the hearts of the people. The ancestral followers' rituals, though forced underground, retained their potency, a testament to the resilience of their culture. These practices, centered around the concept of rebirth through the stars, were a direct challenge to the Golden Order's narrative. By continuing to honor the ancestor spirit, the followers asserted their right to exist outside the Order's rigid framework. Their rituals, though shrouded in secrecy, were a form of quiet rebellion, a refusal to let their traditions be erased entirely. The memory of the ancestor spirit lived on in these acts of devotion, a beacon of hope for those who clung to the old ways. The ancestor spirit's existence also became a cautionary tale of the Golden Order's intolerance, a story told in hushed tones by those who dared to question its authority. The spirit's fall was a stark reminder of the Order's willingness to destroy anything that threatened its hegemony, whether it be a powerful being or a way of life. This tale served as a warning to others who might seek to challenge the Order, illustrating the consequences of defiance. Yet, it also inspired a sense of solidarity among those who rejected the Order's dominance, fostering a shared understanding of the need to resist its oppressive influence. At its core, the story of the ancestor spirit highlighted the fundamental conflict between the Erdtree's grace and the star's ancient power. The Erdtree, with its golden light and promise of renewal, represented a new order that sought to supplant the old ways. The stars, by contrast, embodied a primordial force that had governed the cycle of life and death long before the Erd Tree's rise. The ancestor spirit, as a conduit for this ancient power, stood at the intersection of these two forces, its existence a testament to the enduring tension between them. Its defeat was a victory for the Erd Tree, but it also underscored the resilience of the star's influence, a reminder that the old ways could not be entirely erased. The ancestor spirit's story, though marked by tragedy, was not without hope. Its legacy endured in the hearts of the ancestral followers and in the whispers of those who sought to challenge the Golden Order. The spirit's existence served as a reminder that alternatives to the Erdtree's grace still existed, even if they were forced into the shadows. This enduring legacy ensured that the ancestor spirit's story would not be forgotten, but rather would continue to inspire resistance against the Golden Order's dominance. In this way, the spirit's fall was not an end, but a beginning, a spark that ignited a flame of defiance in the hearts of those who dared to dream of a different future. The Hollowhorn grounds, though fallen into disrepair, remained a testament to the ancestor spirit's enduring influence. The site, with its crumbling effigies and faded carvings, was a poignant reminder of the culture that once thrived there. Yet even in its decay, the grounds retained a sense of sanctity, a quiet power that spoke to the resilience of the ancestral followers' traditions. The spirit's presence lingered in the air, a whisper of the cycles of rebirth that had once defined the land. This lingering essence ensured that the Hollowhorn grounds would not be forgotten, but rather would remain a symbol of the enduring conflict between the Erd Tree's grace and the star's ancient power. The ancestral followers, though diminished, continued to honor the ancestor spirit in their own way, preserving their rituals and passing down their knowledge through generations. These acts of devotion, though carried out in secret, were a form of resistance, a refusal to let their traditions be erased entirely. The memory of the ancestor spirit lived on in these practices, a beacon of hope for those who clung to the old ways. This enduring legacy ensured that the spirit's story would not be forgotten, but rather would continue to inspire those who sought to challenge the Golden Order's dominance. The ancestor spirit's existence, though marked by tragedy, served as a reminder of the enduring power of belief in the face of oppression. Its story, though cautionary, was also one of resilience, a testament to the strength of those who dared to defy the Golden Order. The spirit's legacy endured in the hearts of the ancestral followers and in the whispers of those who sought to challenge the Order's hegemony. In this way, the ancestor spirit's fall was not an end, but a beginning, a spark that ignited a flame of defiance in the hearts of those who dared to dream of a different future. As the shattering war raged across the lands between, fracturing alliances and kingdoms alike, one Empyrean sought to forge a new path, distinct from the Golden Order's flawed dominion. Miquella, the eternal child and twin to Millennia, Blade of Miquella, was no ordinary demigod. Gifted with unparalleled intellect and compassion, he recognized the Golden Order's shortcomings, its rigid hierarchy, its exclusion of the marginalized, and its inability to address the curses that plagued its people. During the shattering, Miquella embarked on a monumental endeavor, the creation of the Halleck Tree, a sanctuary for the outcast and a symbol of hope for those rejected by the Erd Tree's light. Miquella's vision was born of both necessity and rebellion. The Golden Order, governed by Queen Marika the Eternal and the Greater Will, had long enforced a doctrine that favored the strong and pure, casting aside those deemed unworthy. This included the Albinorics, artificial beings created through alchemy, and the misbegotten, cursed creatures born of divine misdeeds. Miquella, however, saw value in all life, regardless of its origin or affliction. He began crafting the haligtree using his own essence and the unalloyed gold he had perfected, a substance pure and uncorrupted by the influence of outer gods. This act was not merely altruistic, it was a deliberate rejection of the Golden Order's dogma, signaling Miquella's intent to forge a new era free from its constraints. Central to Miquella's plan was his own transformation. Cursed with eternal childhood, he sought a way to transcend his stunted form and achieve true godhood. To this end, he created a cocoon within the haligtree, a vessel for his rebirth. This cocoon, crafted from unalloyed gold, was both a sanctuary and a crucible, designed to nurture his ascension. Yet this process was fraught with peril. Miquella's eternal youth was not merely a physical limitation, but a metaphysical curse, one that required immense power and sacrifice to overcome. His cocoon became a symbol of his unwavering resolve, a testament to his belief that even the most insurmountable curses could be broken. As the haligtree took root, it drew the attention of those who shared Miquella's vision. Among them was Loretta, a royal knight of Carian lineage, who had once served the lunar princess Rani. Disillusioned by the infighting and betrayal that characterized the shattering, Loretta abandoned her post and journeyed to the haligtree, pledging her loyalty to Miquella. She became the tree's hidden guardian, a protector of its secrets and its inhabitants. Loretta's presence was a boon to Miquella's cause, as her martial prowess and strategic acumen ensured the haligtree's defenses remained impenetrable. Her transformation into the haligtree's knight marked a turning point, signaling the sanctuary's emergence as a formidable bastion amidst the chaos of the shattering. Word of Miquella's sanctuary spread quickly, attracting the downtrodden and persecuted. The Albinorics, often hunted for their artificial nature, flocked to the haligtree, seeking refuge from a world that scorned them. The misbegotten, creatures born of divine experimentation and cast aside as abominations, also found solace in Miquella's embrace. These groups, long marginalized by the Golden Order, became the haligtree's first inhabitants, their presence a testament to Miquella's inclusive vision. The haligtree itself, rooted in the consecrated snowfield, was deliberately chosen for its isolation, far removed from the Erdtree's influence. This remote location ensured the sanctuary's autonomy, allowing Miquella to cultivate his ideals without interference. Yet Miquella's ambitions extended beyond the haligtree. Deeply affected by the tragic fate of Godwyn the Golden, the first demigod to fall during the Night of the Black Knives, Miquella sought to resurrect his half-brother. Godwyn's death had been a pivotal event in the shattering, marking the beginning of the Erdtree's decline and the spread of Deathroot across the lands between. Miquella believed that by resurrecting Godwyn, he could restore balance and heal the wounds inflicted by the Golden Order's failures. To achieve this, he devised the Eclipse Ritual, a complex and arcane ceremony tied to the celestial phenomenon of an eclipse. This ritual was to be conducted at Castle Sol, a fortress perched high in the mountaintops of the Giants, where the convergence of light and shadow would facilitate Godwyn's return. The eclipse ritual was no simple undertaking, and so it required the harnessing of deathly energies, a force antithetical to the Erdtree's life-giving light. To safeguard the ritual, Miquella enlisted the aid of Commander Niall, a seasoned warrior whose loyalty was unwavering. Niall, a veteran of the Shattering War, had witnessed the devastation wrought by the conflict firsthand. His allegiance to Miquella was born of both respect and desperation, as he saw in the Empyrean a chance to restore order to a fractured world. Niall's presence at Castle Sol ensured the ritual's security, his expertise in warfare and strategy making him an invaluable ally. Yet the eclipse ritual was not without its guardians. A deathrite bird, a spectral creature tied to the energies of death, was stationed at Castle Sol, its presence a reminder of the ritual's perilous nature. These birds, often found in areas steeped in deathly power, were both protectors and harbingers, their eerie cries echoing the dangers of meddling with forces beyond mortal comprehension. The Deathrite bird's role at Castle Sol underscored the gravity of Miquella's plan, serving as both a warning and a testament to his determination. Miquella's efforts were bolstered by the unwavering support of his sister, Millennia. Known as the Blade of Miquella, she was a warrior of unparalleled skill, her body ravaged by the scarlet rot, yet unbroken in spirit. Millennia's loyalty to her brother was absolute, her every action guided by a desire to protect his vision. During the Shattering War, she became the Haligtree's sworn blade, her presence a deterrent to any who sought to threaten its sanctity. Millennia's battles were not merely physical, they were also ideological, as she fought to uphold Miquella's belief in a world free from the Golden Order's tyranny. One of Miquella's most significant creations was the unalloyed gold needle, a device designed to ward off the influence of outer gods. These deities, such as the Scarlet Rot and the Frenzied Flame, sought to exert their will upon the lands between, their powers corrupting and destructive. Miquella's needle, crafted from his unalloyed gold, was a tool of resistance, capable of shielding its wielder from these malevolent forces. This invention was particularly crucial for Millennia, whose body was ravaged by the scarlet rot. The needle symbolized Miquella's ingenuity and his commitment to protecting those he cared for, even in the face of insurmountable odds. As the Shattering War continued to engulf the lands between, Miquella's Haligtree stood as a beacon of hope, a sanctuary for the outcast, and a testament to the Empyrean's vision. Yet the path to realizing this vision was fraught with challenges, each step requiring immense sacrifice and resolve. Miquella's eclipse ritual, his quest for rebirth, and in his efforts to protect the Haligtree were all interconnected, forming a tapestry of ambition and compassion that would shape the future of the lands between. As Millennia's scarlet rot began to resurface, the Empyrean warrior found herself at a crossroads. The disease that had plagued her since birth, a curse inherited from her mother, the goddess of rot, threatened to consume her once more. Desperate for relief, she turned to the one person who had ever offered her hope, her twin brother, Miquella. Within the Haligtree, the sanctuary he had cultivated for the outcasts of the lands between, she sought the cure he had promised. But unbeknownst to her, Miquella was no longer there to provide it. Mohg, the Lord of Blood, had been watching. The deranged omen, exiled beneath Landal's sewers, had long harbored ambitions of his own dynasty, one that would rise on the back of a god. And in Miquella, he saw the perfect vessel. The young Empyrean had willingly entered a cocoon within the Haligtree's roots, attempting to shed his eternal childhood through a process of metamorphosis. But in this vulnerable state, Mohg struck. Slipping through the shadows of the underground, he stole Miquella away to his hidden palace, a grotesque realm of blood and sacrifice. There he began his profane ritual, seeking to awaken Miquella, not as the benevolent ruler he had intended to become, but as a god of Mohg's own design, a deity of blood and suffering. Millennia, however, remained oblivious. She continued to stand vigil at the Haligtree's roots, believing her brother still slumbered within the now empty cocoon. Her clean-wrought knights, ever loyal, fortified the Haligtree's defenses against the encroaching forces of the Shattering. These warriors, clad in golden armor tarnished by the rot they had endured alongside their commander, patrolled the branches and roots, their spears and shields a bulwark against any who would threaten their lord's sanctuary. Among them, Finlay, one of Millennia's most devoted captains, had once carried her unconscious body back from the ruins of Caelid after her battle with Radon. Now they prepared for a siege that would never come, not from the outside, at least. At the Haligtree's entrance, Loretta, the Albinoric knight, took up her post. Once a noble of the lands between, She had abandoned her former life to protect the Haligtree's outcasts, wielding her spectral greatbow with lethal precision. Her arrows, conjured from sorcery, could pierce through armor and bone alike, deterring any who dared approach. Yet even her vigilance could not halt the stagnation that had begun to seep into the Haligtree itself. Without Michaela's guiding will, the great tree's growth faltered. Its branches, once vibrant with the promise of a new order, now twisted into a labyrinth of dead ends and crumbling pathways. The sanctuary he had dreamed of, a refuge for the persecuted, from the misbegotten to the albinorics, remained incomplete, its potential forever unrealized. Millennia, her body racked by the advancing rot, waited in vain. She stood motionless in the Haligtree's heart, her sword at the ready, as if expecting Michaela to emerge at any moment. But the cocoon was hollow, and her brother's absence gnawed at her, just as the rot devoured her flesh. The disease, held at bay for so long by sheer force of will, now spread unchecked. Her golden prosthesis, a masterpiece of craftsmanship, remained as steadfast as her resolve. But even the mightiest blade could not cut through the truth. Michaela was gone. Far to the north, in the snow-swept ruins of Castle Sol, another tragedy unfolded. The eclipse ritual, a solemn ceremony intended to resurrect Godwyn the Golden, the first of the demigods to fall in the night of the Black Knives, had failed. Michaela's guidance had been crucial to its success, for he alone had sought to restore his half-brother, not as a soulless abomination, but as a true living being. Without him, the ritual was left incomplete. The eclipse, a dark sun that should have heralded Godwyn's return, instead hung frozen in the sky, a symbol of hope turned to despair. The soldiers of Castle Sol, their minds shattered by the unfinished rite, became spectral wraiths, bound eternally to the castle's crumbling walls. Their tormented cries echoed through the halls, a chorus of anguish for a resurrection that would never come. Yet even as the Haligtree languished, Michaela's followers refused to abandon their faith. The Albinoric Latenna, a woman of the second generation of her kind, continued her pilgrimage toward the sanctuary, guided by the promise of a land where her people would no longer be hunted or scorned. Though the Haligtree was not the paradise Michaela had envisioned, it remained a beacon for those with nowhere else to turn. The misbegotten, the deformed, the forsaken, all still journeyed toward its roots, clinging to the hope that one day their Lord would return to fulfill his vision. But Michaela was far away, trapped in the nightmare of Mog's making. The Lord of Blood whispered to him in his slumber, pouring his own cursed essence into the Empyrean's veins. The Haligtree, once a symbol of rebirth, now stood as a monument to stolen potential, and Millennia, the blade of Michaela, remained at her post, her body rotting, her mind unbroken. She would wait forever if she had to, even as the world outside crumbled, even as the shattering raged on. For in her heart there was no doubt Michaela would return, and when he did, she would be there to greet him, no matter what she had become. The eclipse and Michaela's Haligtree, once a twin beacon of hope and renewal, had become a tale of fractured destinies. One sibling stolen, the other decaying. One ritual failed, another perverted. And yet, in the shadows of the lands between, the echoes of Michaela's compassion endured. In the hearts of the outcasts, in the whispers of the desperate, the dream of the Haligtree lived on, a dream that, like its creator, had not yet been extinguished. As the Haligtree's medallion was split and hidden to safeguard the sanctuary from outsiders, the once thriving bastion of Michaela's vision began to falter. The Haligtree, a refuge forged by the Empyrean Michaela to shelter the outcasts and persecuted of the lands between, relied heavily on its creator's presence and power. But with Michaela's mysterious disappearance, the sanctuary's defenses weakened, leaving it vulnerable to both internal decay and external threats. One of the most devastating blows came with Millennia's duel against General Radon in the heart of Caelid. This climactic battle, a pivotal moment during the Shattering War, saw Millennia unleash her Scarlet Rot in a desperate bid to defeat Radon. While she emerged victorious, the cost was immense. Millennia fell into a coma, her body returning to the Haligtree where she remained in stasis, unable to protect or lead her brother's creation. Her absence left the Haligtree's defenses fractured, its purpose increasingly uncertain. Despite this, the Haligtree continued to serve as a sanctuary for the oppressed, particularly the misbegotten Crusaders. These beings, born of cursed lineage and often persecuted by the Golden Order, found solace within the Haligtree's branches. Miquella's vision of a haven for the marginalized endured, even as the sanctuary itself began to crumble. The misbegotten Crusaders, armed with faith and desperation, clung to the hope that Miquella's return would restore the Haligtree to its former glory. Yet without their creator's guiding hand, their presence became a testament to the sanctuary's fading purpose rather than its strength. Amidst this decline, Loretta, the Knight of the Haligtree, remained steadfast in her loyalty. Originally a Carian knight, Loretta had abandoned her former allegiance to serve Miquella's cause, drawn by his promise of a world free from the Golden Order's tyranny. Even as the Haligtree's purpose faded, Loretta's dedication never wavered. She patrolled the sanctuary's outskirts, defending it from intruders and ensuring its survival, however precarious. Her presence symbolized the enduring hope that Miquella's vision might one day be realized, even as the Haligtree itself became a shadow of its former self. Far to the north, at Castle Sol, the remnants of Miquella's failed eclipse ritual lingered in the form of the Deathrite bird. This spectral creature, a guardian of ancient death rituals, stood as a haunting reminder of Miquella's attempt to bring about an eclipse. The eclipse, intended to sever the influence of the Erd Tree and the Greater Will, was a crucial part of Miquella's plan to create a new order. However, the ritual's failure left Castle Sol in ruins, its purpose unfulfilled. The Deathrite bird's presence underscored the Haligtree's broader struggle, a vision of renewal thwarted by forces beyond its control. Yet Miquella's influence persisted, even in his absence. His unalloyed gold artifacts, scattered across the lands between, served as enduring symbols of his ideals. Unalloyed gold, a material resistant to external influences, embodied Miquella's desire to create something pure and untainted by the corrupting forces of the world. These artifacts, whether in the form of needles or talismans, continued to inspire those who sought refuge from the Golden Order's oppression. They were a tangible reminder of Miquella's vision, even as the Haligtree itself began to succumb to decay. Within the sanctuary, the Haligtree's knights remained vigilant but directionless. The Haligtree soldiers, clad in armor adorned with the sanctuary's sigil, patrolled its branches, their loyalty unwavering even as their purpose grew unclear. The Cleanrot Knights, once Millennia's elite warriors, continued to defend the Haligtree, their faith in their commander enduring despite her comatose state. These knights, bound by duty and devotion, stood as the last line of defense for a sanctuary that no longer had a clear path forward. Their presence was a testament to the Haligtree's enduring legacy, even as its future grew increasingly uncertain. The Haligtree's heart, once a symbol of purity and hope, began to succumb to Millennia's scarlet rot. This corruption, born of Millennia's desperate struggle against Radon, spread through the sanctuary's core, tainting its sanctity. The scarlet rot, a manifestation of Millennia's cursed lineage, consumed the Haligtree from within, transforming its once vibrant branches into twisted, decaying husks. This internal decay mirrored the sanctuary's broader decline, a poignant reminder of the fragility of Miquella's vision. The Haligtree, once a beacon of hope, became a fractured symbol of loss and unfulfilled potential. Despite this, the Haligtree endured, its branches still reaching toward the heavens. It stood as a testament to Miquella's ideals, even as its creator remained absent and its guardian lay in stasis. The sanctuary's knights, its misbegotten crusaders, and even its corrupted heart all spoke to the enduring legacy of Miquella's vision. Yet without Miquella's guiding hand, the Halig tree's purpose grew increasingly uncertain. It became a place of waiting, its inhabitants clinging to the hope that Miquella might one day return and restore the sanctuary to its former glory. The Halig tree's story is one of both triumph and tragedy. It represents the best of Miquella's ideals, a sanctuary for the oppressed, a vision of purity and renewal, and a defiance of the Golden Order's tyranny. Yet it also embodies the fragility of those ideals, their vulnerability to corruption, decay, and the relentless march of time. The Halig tree stands as a fractured symbol of hope, its creator gone and its guardian awaiting a return that may never come. In the end, it is a testament to the enduring power of Miquella's vision, even as it serves as a reminder of the cost of defiance in a world shaped by forces beyond mortal control. As the shattering war continued to ravage the lands between, the Halig tree remained a place of refuge, its branches sheltering those who had nowhere else to turn. Yet its future remained uncertain, its purpose increasingly unclear. The sanctuary's knights, its misbegotten crusaders, and even its corrupted heart all spoke to the enduring legacy of Miquella's vision. Yet without Miquella's guiding hand, the Halig tree's purpose grew increasingly uncertain. It became a place of waiting, its inhabitants clinging to the hope that Miquella might one day return and restore the sanctuary to its former glory. The Halig tree's story is one of both triumph and tragedy. It represents the best of Miquella's ideals, a sanctuary for the oppressed, a vision of purity and renewal, and a defiance of the Golden Order's tyranny. Yet it also embodies the fragility of those ideals, their vulnerability to corruption, decay, and the relentless march of time. The Halig tree stands as a fractured symbol of hope, its creator gone and its guardian awaiting a return that may never come. In the end, it is a testament to the enduring power of Miquella's vision, even as it serves as a reminder of the cost of defiance in a world shaped by forces beyond mortal control. Following the cataclysmic events of the Shattering, a period marked by chaos and the fracturing of the Golden Order's dominion, the lands between entered an era of decline and secrecy. It was during this post-Shattering collapse that the Golden Order, desperate to reclaim its former glory, turned to forbidden experiments in an attempt to harness the power of dragons. These majestic creatures, revered for their ancient lineage and immense strength, had long been symbols of a bygone age, their influence lingering in the myths and legends of the lands between. The Golden Order sought to recreate their might, not out of reverence, but out of a desire to dominate and control. Thus began a dark chapter in the history of the lands between, one that would culminate in the tragic fate of the Dragonkin soldiers. The Golden Order's experiments were ambitious and ruthless. Drawing upon the arcane knowledge preserved in their archives, they attempted to replicate dragon physiology, blending the essence of dragons with mortal flesh. The Dragonkin soldiers were the result of these efforts, grotesque yet awe-inspiring creations that bore the semblance of dragons, but lacked their true majesty. These beings were not born of natural evolution or divine will, but were instead forged in the crucible of human ambition and hubris. Their bodies were massive, their limbs elongated and scaled, and their faces bore a haunting mix of human and draconic features. Yet, despite their imposing appearance, the Dragonkin soldiers were fundamentally flawed. They lacked the innate power and grace of true dragons, their strength derived from artificial means rather than the natural order of the world. The experiments were deemed unsuccessful, a stark reminder of the limitations of mortal ingenuity. The Golden Order, unwilling to acknowledge its failures, chose to discard the Dragonkin soldiers rather than refine or improve upon their design. These once prized creations were cast aside, hidden away in the depths of the Eternal Cities, subterranean metropolises that had long served as repositories for the Golden Order's secrets. The Eternal Cities, such as Noxtella and Nokron, were remnants of an ancient civilization that had thrived beneath the surface of the lands between. These cities, once centers of knowledge and innovation, had fallen into ruin, their grand halls now echoing with the whispers of forgotten truths. It was here, in the shadowed recesses of these underground realms, that the Dragonkin soldiers were concealed, their existence a testament to the Golden Order's hubris and cruelty. Some of the Dragonkin soldiers were placed in the Lake of Rot, a fetid and toxic expanse that lay beneath the lands between. This cursed lake, filled with stagnant water and plagued by a virulent rot, was a place of suffering and despair. The Dragonkin soldiers, already burdened by their flawed existence, were condemned to writhe in perpetual agony within this noxious environment. Their massive forms twisted and contorted as the rot consumed them, their cries of anguish echoing through the cavernous depths. The Lake of Rot became a prison for these tormented beings, a place where they were left to languish, forgotten by the world above. Their suffering was not merely physical, but existential, a cruel reminder of their failure to embody the majesty of the dragons they were meant to emulate. The Eternal Cities themselves became repositories for the Golden Order's discarded creations, places where the remnants of their experiments were hidden away from prying eyes. Noxtella, one of the most prominent of these cities, played a particularly significant role in this dark history. Its labyrinthine corridors and towering spires housed countless secrets, including the Dragonkin soldier tasked with guarding an ancient meteorite. This meteorite, a relic of cosmic significance, was believed to hold the key to understanding the stars and their influence on the lands between. The stars, long revered as sources of power and prophecy, were central to the cosmology of the Eternal Cities, their movements believed to shape the fate of the world. The meteorite, a fragment of the heavens, was a tangible link to these celestial forces, its presence in Noxtella a testament to the city's once great knowledge of the cosmos. The Dragonkin soldier of Noxtella, bound by its duty, stood as a silent sentinel over this relic. Its massive form loomed over the meteorite, its presence both intimidating and sorrowful. This creature, a product of the Golden Order's failed experiments, was now tasked with protecting a fragment of the very cosmos it could never truly understand. The irony of its existence was palpable, a poignant reminder of the disconnect between the ambitions of the Golden Order and the natural order of the world. The Dragonkin soldier's role as a guardian was both a blessing and a curse, a purpose that gave its existence meaning, but also underscored its tragic origins. The Dragonkin soldier's existence is a stark reminder of the cruelty and hubris that defined the Golden Order's experiments. These beings, created in the pursuit of power and dominion, were ultimately discarded when they failed to meet their creator's expectations. Their suffering, both physical and existential, serves as a testament to the consequences of unchecked ambition and the disregard for the natural order. The Golden Order, once a beacon of stability and authority, had become a shadow of its former self, its actions driven by desperation and a desire to reclaim its lost glory. The Dragonkin soldiers, abandoned and forgotten, were collateral damage in this pursuit, their fate a reflection of the moral decay that had taken hold of the lands between. As the Eternal Cities fell into ruin, their once great civilizations crumbling under the weight of their secrets, the Dragonkin soldiers were left to endure their solitude. These cities, once centers of knowledge and innovation, had become tombs for the Golden Order's discarded creations, their halls echoing with the whispers of forgotten truths. The Dragonkin soldiers, hidden away in these subterranean realms, were left to languish in obscurity, their existence a testament to the hubris of their creators. The eternal cities, like the Dragonkin soldiers themselves, were relics of a bygone age, their grandeur now overshadowed by the weight of their secrets. In the end, the Dragonkin soldier's fate is a poignant reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition and the disregard for the natural order. These beings, created in the pursuit of power and dominion, were ultimately discarded when they failed to meet their creator's expectations. Their suffering, both physical and existential, serves as a testament to the moral decay that had taken hold of the lands between. The Golden Order, once a beacon of stability and authority, had become a shadow of its former self, its actions driven by desperation and a desire to reclaim its lost glory. The Dragonkin soldiers, abandoned and forgotten, were collateral damage in this pursuit, their fate a reflection of the hubris and cruelty that defined the post-shattering era. The Lake of Rot, once a serene and mystical body of water, became a cursed and forsaken place in the aftermath of the shattering. Its waters, once clear and pure, were now tainted by the profound suffering of the Dragonkin soldiers, whose anguish seeped into the very fabric of the land. This transformation was not merely physical, but spiritual, as the Lake of Rot became a manifestation of their torment. The Dragonkin soldiers, creations of the eternal cities, were beings caught in a tragic limbo, forever yearning for the dragonhood they could never attain. Their pain was compounded by the realization that they were incomplete, flawed experiments rather than the majestic dragons they were meant to emulate. This unfulfilled desire for transcendence left them in a state of perpetual agony, their cries echoing through the depths of the lake. The Golden Order, the governing force of the lands between, had conducted these experiments in secrecy, far from the prying eyes of the populace. The creation of the Dragonkin soldiers was part of a broader initiative to harness the power of dragons, beings of immense strength and ancient wisdom. However, these experiments were fraught with ethical dilemmas, as they involved the manipulation of life itself. The Golden Order sought to create beings that could rival dragons, but in doing so, they subjected the Dragonkin soldiers to unimaginable suffering. The knowledge of these experiments was confined to a select few, ensuring that the wider populace remained unaware of the atrocities being committed in the name of progress. As the lands between descended into chaos following the shattering, the eternal cities became a focal point for scholars and explorers. Those ancient subterranean metropolises, shrouded in mystery, were home to remnants of a civilization that had once thrived in isolation. Among these remnants were the Dragonkin soldiers, whose presence in the eternal cities attracted the curiosity of those who sought to uncover the secrets of their creation. Scholars, driven by a thirst for knowledge, ventured into the depths of Nokstella and Nokron, hoping to study the Dragonkin soldiers and unlock the mysteries of their existence. These scholars believed that understanding the Dragonkin soldiers could provide insights into the nature of dragons and the limits of mortal ingenuity. One of the most notable figures among these scholars was Muriel, pastor of vows, a devout and learned individual who sought to document the history and lore of the lands between. Muriel's writings, though often cryptic, provide valuable insights into the Dragonkin soldiers and the eternal cities. He noted that the Dragonkin soldiers were not merely failed experiments, but symbols of the eternal city's hidden suffering. Their existence was a testament to the lengths to which the Golden Order would go in its pursuit of power, even if it meant sacrificing the lives and dignity of its creations. Muriel's reflections on the Dragonkin soldiers reveal us a deep sense of empathy and a recognition of the moral complexities inherent in their creation. The Dragonkin soldier of Nokstella, in particular, became a poignant symbol of this suffering. Guarding an ancient meteorite deep within the city, This soldier was a figure of both awe and sorrow. The meteorite, rumored to hold immense power, was a relic of the Eternal City's past, a reminder of their once great civilization. The Dragonkin soldier's role as its guardian was both a duty and a curse, as it bound them to a place of profound isolation and despair. The meteorite itself was a subject of fascination for scholars, who believed it could hold the key to understanding the Eternal City's connection to the cosmos and the origins of the Dragonkin soldiers. As more scholars and explorers delved into the secrets of the Eternal Cities, the ethical implications of the Golden Order's experiments began to surface. Those who learned of the Dragonkin soldiers' plight were often horrified by the extent of their suffering and the callousness with which they had been created. This growing awareness led to a condemnation of the Golden Order's methods, with many questioning the morality of their pursuit of power. The Dragonkin soldiers, once seen as mere tools of war, were now recognized as beings deserving of compassion and respect. This shift in perspective marked a turning point in the understanding of the Golden Order's legacy, as it revealed the darker aspects of their quest for dominance. The Lake of Rot, transformed by the Dragonkin soldiers' suffering, became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking to understand their plight. Pilgrims, scholars, and adventurers alike journeyed to the lake, drawn by a desire to bear witness to the consequences of the Golden Order's actions. The lake's waters, now a swirling miasma of decay and despair, served as a stark reminder of the cost of ambition unchecked by morality. Those who visited the Lake of Rot often left with a deeper appreciation for the complexity of the lands between's history and a renewed sense of purpose in their quest for truth and justice. Among these pilgrims was Raya, a serpent-like maiden who served as a scout for the Volcano Manor. Raya's journey to the Lake of Rot was driven by a desire to uncover the truth about the Dragonkin soldiers and the Eternal Cities. Her encounters with the Dragonkin soldiers left a profound impact on her, as she came to see them not as monsters but as victims of a cruel and unforgiving world. Raya's reflections on the Dragonkin soldiers reveal a deep sense of empathy and a recognition of the moral complexities inherent in their creation. Her writings, though often cryptic, provide valuable insights into the Dragonkin soldiers and the Eternal Cities. The Dragonkin soldiers' existence raised fundamental questions about the ethics of the Golden Order's pursuit of power. Their creation was a testament to the lengths to which the Golden Order would go in its quest for dominance, even if it meant sacrificing the lives and dignity of its creations. This realization led to a broader questioning of the Golden Order's methods and the morality of their actions. The Dragonkin soldiers, once seen as mere tools of war, were now recognized as beings deserving of compassion and respect. This shift in perspective marked a turning point in the understanding of the Golden Order's legacy, as it revealed the darker aspects of their quest for dominance. As the lands between continued to grapple with the consequences of the shattering, the Dragonkin soldiers remained a poignant reminder of the cost of unchecked ambition. Their suffering, etched into the very fabric of the Lake of Rot, served as a cautionary tale for those who sought to wield power without regard for its consequences. The pilgrims who journeyed to the lake, the scholars who studied their plight, and the adventurers who bore witness to their torment all played a part in ensuring that the Dragonkin soldiers' story would not be forgotten. In their suffering, the Dragonkin soldiers became symbols of resilience and the enduring quest for justice in a world fraught with moral complexity. The Lake of Rot, now a place of pilgrimage and reflection, stood as a testament to the enduring legacy of the Dragonkin soldiers. Its waters, tainted by their suffering, served as a reminder of the cost of ambition, unchecked by morality. Those who visited the lake often left with a deeper appreciation for the complexity of the lands between's history and a renewed sense of purpose in their quest for truth and justice. The Dragonkin soldiers, once seen as mere tools of war, had become symbols of resilience and the enduring quest for justice in a world fraught with moral complexity. Their story, etched into the very fabric of the Lake of Rot, would continue to inspire and challenge those who sought to understand the true cost of power. The Dragonkin soldier's agony, a haunting echo of the lands between's broader suffering, is perhaps most vividly embodied in the Dragonkin soldier of Noxtella. This creature, a product of the Golden Order's relentless experimentation, stands as a testament to the tragic consequences of unchecked ambition. Despite its torment, the Dragonkin soldier of Noxtella remains steadfast in its duty, guarding an ancient meteorite with unwavering loyalty. This meteorite, a relic of cosmic significance, is believed to hold the key to unlocking powers beyond mortal comprehension, drawing the attention of various factions vying for control in the post-shattering era. The Eternal Cities, once grand centers of civilization, have become desolate ruins, their former glory overshadowed by the presence of these tortured guardians. The Dragonkin soldiers, with their grotesque forms and immense power, inspire both fear and fascination among the few who dare to venture into these forsaken places. The Golden Order's experiments on dragons and Dragonkin soldiers, driven by a desire to harness their strength for their own purposes, eventually fade into obscurity. As the lands between descends further into chaos, the knowledge of these experiments is lost to most, preserved only in the fragmented records of those who still cling to the remnants of the Order's former power. The Dragonkin soldiers, once seen as symbols of the Golden Order's dominance, are now forgotten relics of a bygone era. Their legacy, however, endures as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the dangers that arise when ambition is left unchecked. The Dragonkin soldier of Noxtella, in its ceaseless vigil over the ancient meteorite, embodies this legacy, its purpose unfulfilled, its existence a testament to the suffering wrought by the Golden Order's hubris. The Lake of Rot, a place of profound sorrow, serves as a poignant reminder of the Dragonkin soldier's suffering. Its murky waters, infused with the essence of decay, are a reflection of the anguish that permeates the lands between in the wake of the shattering. The lake's connection to the Dragonkin soldiers is not merely symbolic. It is believed that the waters themselves are tainted by the remnants of the experiments that created these tortured beings. The Lake of Rot, like the Dragonkin soldiers, stands as a silent witness to the folly of those who sought to bend the natural order to their will. The story of the Dragonkin soldiers is a hidden chapter in the history of the lands between, known only to a few. Those who uncover the truth are often left with a profound sense of unease, as the tale serves as a grim reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition. The Dragonkin soldier of Noxtella, in its unyielding vigil, continues to guard the ancient meteorite, its purpose unfulfilled, its existence a testament to the suffering wrought by the Golden Order's hubris. As the lands between teeters on the brink of collapse, the Dragonkin soldier's story remains a haunting reminder of the dangers that arise when ambition is left unchecked. The Dragonkin soldier's agony, a haunting echo of the lands between's broader suffering, is perhaps most vividly embodied in the Dragonkin soldier of Noxtella. This creature, a product of the Golden Order's relentless experimentation, stands as a testament to the tragic consequences of unchecked ambition. Despite its torment, the Dragonkin soldier of Noxtella remains steadfast in its duty, guarding an ancient meteorite with unwavering loyalty. This meteorite, a relic of cosmic significance, is believed to hold the key to unlocking powers beyond mortal comprehension, drawing the attention of various factions vying for control in the post-shattering era.